Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of By the Numbers, the quintessential Counterstrike podcast. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me, as always does, is the esports historian, Duncan Thorman Shields. Sammy D pressing the buttons, just recovered from a 3-day hangover. I didn't think little Zoomers got hangovers, Sam.
I'm old now, mate. I'm past mid-20s. I feel like I'm at least 30.
Fair though, he has lost all that weight, and when you do lose weight, you do become a lightweight. I found that myself by the diet.
That did catch me out the first time I went drinking. I had 7 beers straight to bed.
You think you know where you're at, and then you just realise, obviously, just very quickly, like, oh shit, whoa. It's like 3 times more effective.
Is it because it's hard?
So there you go. I mean, that is a good reason to lose weight.
Cheaper
so you can get drunk. Yeah, cheaper drinks. Focus on that cirrhosis instead. Drink more, get wrecked more. Anyway, look, before we get into today's filler episode, although there are a few big topics that we will
broach. Just the idea you're about to do a sponsor read after you said out loud the sentence, drink more, get wrecked more. That's why cirrhosis delivers good like that.
Today's podcast is brought to you by alcohol. Drink responsibly, obviously, if you are. Definitely drink responsibly. Don't drink more and get cirrhosis.
Don't do that.
That's bad. And also on a kind of, macro level, obviously we'll put a terrible burden on the NHS. So if you're British or, just the healthcare system where you live, if everyone had cirrhosis. So yeah, don't do that. Now, sponsors. Yeah, we obviously have sponsors. Our VPN sponsor, NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS. Take advantage of that. They've re-upped their sponsorship with us. They're going to be with us for another year. And they're also sponsoring the audio podcast. You can take advantage of the exact same savings using the code GOSPEL if you want to take advantage of it that way. Either way works for me. And thanks to them for the support. And, of course, our new sponsors, Midnight.com. Our betting sponsor, you can go over there right now, and if you deposit £20, they will match that deposit. We've done a load of cool stuff, like just today. They've done an odds boost for if you bet in line with my ESL Pro League predictions, which today wasn't very good, but
okay.
But I'm sure the others are going to be winners, Duncan. I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
You're the one
even out in the end.
Yes, you're the one whose predictions are notoriously terrible. But anyway, you could go and take advantage of that. They've boosted the odds up, so a £5 stake will give you £50 total back. So look into that, and obviously sign up to the site using the links in the description. And thanks so much to them. Right. So Duncan. As I said, classic By the Numbers filler episodes. Where would you like to start? Because we've got a lot of filler. It's a lot of filler.
True.
It's a big filler episode.
That's true.
Not to mention 2 weeks of viewer questions to get through. So, we could start with the RMRs.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, well, let's do that then. So, obviously, the European RMR was going underway. And when I say the RMRs, not the RMR, the legitimate RMR, but the open qualifier for the qualifier, essentially, for the major. And so there were a number of decent teams, let's say, that were sort of battling away in that RMR, and some of them really left it late to sort of have any chance of getting through. Most notably, Big and Fnatic were the teams that they left it right until the 4th week of the qualifier. You essentially had 4 chances, and in the end, Fnatic were able to make it to a final. Big did it in the 3rd week as well, which I say 3rd week, literally just a few days before that. And so now we know, at the very least, all the teams that are going to be going from Europe. And I'll just read you out the big names, Duncan. Obviously, Big have made it to that next stage now. And remember, we're going to be dividing Europe into RML Europe A and RML Europe B. So these teams will eventually get filtered into certain groups. But yeah, we've obviously, as I said, we've got OG. We've got Big managed to make it through. Fnatic just by the skin of their teeth, although maybe it's worth talking about the fucking shit state of affairs they're in. Currently playing an ESL Pro League with 3 stand-ins. Just nightmarish stuff. Sprout, obviously, are in there. Endpoint, the Brits managed to make it. Anonymo, the Poles, Team Spirit, Sinners from the Czech Republic, Dignitas, and Eternal Fire from Turkey, and Heat, the French team, who have been Body and Lucky, so the other Lucky, the original Lucky, the one ESL always mistake the Danish Lucky for. They've been actually catching a lot of people cold, in these qualifiers. So actually, when you look at it, I know we've got a lot of mitigating circumstances that are kind of impacting on the top 10 right now. But overall, I'd say that's a pretty good caliber of team that I've got through. There's a lot of names there that are definitely capable of upsetting some of the people at the lower end of that top 10, top 15.
Yeah, and also you definitely saw part of the reason why, funnily enough, when we talk about the Astralis topic, this will be relevant. You can see why teams are once again desperate to keep those fucking like invites and seeds and anything for the major, because yet again, as we all know, and Fnatic were the ultimate people who almost paid the price for this, those fucking open qualifiers are brutal. Like with Fnatic's case, because they'd made player changes, people obviously would have blamed that. But like, as you see, mate, there are so many teams out there that you could just run into in these online European ones that could just take out even listen, if you're really, really good, maybe you can get through all these. But I always think like you have to almost be like twice as good to guarantee you get through online qualifiers. Like, I'm just glad that the big names made it in general. Like, it would be a travesty if we did just like, here's the thing, I don't mind some of the lesser names make it as long as the good ones make it as well. But obviously if people like Alex set of Crims just aren't there, and then some of the squads like Heat are there instead. Look, fair play to them for qualifying, but it wouldn't feel as cool from someone who's on the esports side, you know?
Yeah, and look, I feel that there were a number of teams that were really in risk of not getting there, and they might have problems that they're going to be able to, kind of resolve. Obviously, Fnatic's situation, you have to feel it's kind of temporary. They've still got good players on the roster. Obviously, in Pro League, things are going to shit because Crims isn't even there. He's currently sidelined with COVID. But I think in general, there's not like any teams that I look at and go, you're not, like, you definitely don't deserve to be there based on kind of like the performances they put in the qualifiers. There's a couple of surprising ones, I guess. I mean, the AVE, which is a Russian team. So, I guess kind of watch this space about what happens moving forward based on visas and travel and everything else. But that's Waterfalls.
Obviously, nobody could have known, but the timing that we've just merged the CIS RMR with the European.
Oh, I know. Like, I think we made this point briefly on the last episode, but like, the time was right in terms of competition and what it was going to do to streamline the tournament structure. And of course, it's worked out absolutely horribly with, global events that are occurring. And like I say, there are a number of teams that have been, that have come through these qualifiers that you can almost say it's potentially futile for them to continue, because it's not even just the case of, well, eventually this is going to go away or whatever. Belgium have made it abundantly clear they are not going to be taking Russian visas for the foreseeable future. And obviously the major is in Antwerp. So unless they've already got some paperwork, and as we'll get to on this episode, some of the Russian players are looking at changing their nationality, leaving the country because of what it's going to do to them moving forward and their ability to compete. So more on that in a moment. But
I agree, though, because here's the thing. Now that we know that that's at least possible, that they might not be able to play, of all the times in history where we need to have a really robust, essentially premise of who can fill in your slot, we better have that this time around. You better know who's next in line and give them the time if they need a visa or something, because if you look how many teams are in this actual RMR, dude, there's loads CIS regions, so there's a world where we might have to replace 2-3 teams, who knows. So I just hope people are thinking about that now and actually not going to wait and get caught by surprise when inevitably people can't travel.
Yeah, and look, as I said, it's not just AVE. Team Spirit are there. Team Spirit was specifically named, I think, when Blast put their statement out, and they've just rebuilt a team, for the purpose of competing in these tournaments. That kind of probably feels like a bit of a hollow endeavor. Forza, of course, are there. Quasar is another Russian team that are there. The Russian region was well represented in this. These RMRs. And, they've given a very good account of themselves. And now, of course, they're in a situation where, look, it makes sense if you're a Na'vi or a Munazi to move, to leave your country and get a dual nationality, get a passport. I don't even know. Maybe even have to fucking renounce your Russian
passport. Whatever you can do, yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know enough about the process because obviously it's never affected me. But I mean, if you're a Quasar, if you're an Ave, hell, even if you're a Team Spirit,
do it if you're them, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, how could you justify it? So while we've got these teams, and so far no statements have been made by PGL about what's going to happen. They've not said anything yet. We've had ESL, we've had Blast, we've had other smaller tournament organizers. I think PGL have been so overwhelmed by the scale of the RMRs. Some regions, I believe, is still going on at the time of recording this. And so maybe we'll get a definitive statement as we go into the proper RMRs for real, which now are just one tournament, of course. But I think they need to come out and explain what's going to happen, because honestly, there's probably some teams that maybe they would prefer to pull out rather than go through the rigmarole of competing to be then told you can't come to the major for real anyway. It's all been a waste of your time. And then what happens? Who gets the there's a million car crash outcomes down the road if we don't sort of address it now, I think. But in general, the RMRs went pretty well. The scale of the RMRs were absolutely ridiculous. You had these 512 team open bracket best of one online qualifiers done through the Faceit client, which, I mean, they're always a disaster. Well, I would say always. They're usually a disaster because of the sheer scope of what you're trying to do. But they went through. There was practically, there wasn't a lot of delays. I was streaming them. They only had one cheating incident that I'm aware of, where they banned 3 players retroactively after a bracket had been finalized. So all things told, I mean, we've talked.
By the way, though, I can't remember, there was some famous team, though, right, that was complaining that they'd been beaten earlier by the squad that did the cheaters, right? Yes. Guys, we've done this a million times, so I'll say it for the millionth time. We can't just run the whole bracket again. I agree, you were robbed of a spot. I agree that is unfair. Spoiler, by the way, the TO isn't Valve software. They don't make fucking anti-cheat software. It isn't actually their job to make anti-cheat software either. So in my opinion, if you are the TO, this happened. I notice the problem here is, though, people only give a flying fuck when it's like Faceit or Flashpoint does this. Every bracket in the world has this problem, it feels like, in open qualifiers. Inevitably, one team does something dodgy, and then you have to DQ them, and then everyone they beat goes, at least if they're famous and has the platform, what if I would have beaten them? So you have to rerun it. The problem is, like I say, logistically, you just can't. I'm sorry. As much as it's fucked up at the current situation, we kind of have to find an uneasy compromise, which is, I'm sorry, the result has to stand. It just does.
Yeah, and I made that point on the stream as well. It's like, listen, if you really want to try and force the TO's hand, you have to stop. You have to stop playing.
Yes,
in the game.
Perfect, exactly. It's like the anonymous thing. Exactly, same scenario for me. Same. That's where the power dynamic. The mistake they make is their mistake is they essentially end their part of their participation in the match and then just allow the TO to do what they want. As you say, listen, make them DQ you. If they DQ you, also, by the way, your story becomes 100% more interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. If basically you get disqualified for refusing to play against a team you suspect are cheating, I mean, the optics of that are terrible. And we all know we exist in an optics culture, that the way you're going to force the hands of a lot of these TOs these days isn't through, what's right or what's wrong. It's just through community backlash and perception. So, yeah, I mean, it just is a word of advice. If you're ever in that situation, and I know it's hard because in the moment, you might not be able to tell. It might be something you can only tell by watching back a demo or something. But you have to say there's something off about this game. These guys are cheating. We refuse to play until you investigate. And yes, it'll hold up the bracket. Yes, you'll be deeply unpopular. Yes, the TO might not agree with you, might not find in your favor, but and might DQ you. But ultimately, what happens retroactively if they get banned? Well, we can't run back a 512. I mean, these things were done at short notice. by the seat of our pants collectively, and it was a miracle we got through in the fashion we did. You cannot expect the TO to ever take a bracket of that size, especially in the early stages, and make everybody play again. Even if it was just half the bracket, it's just a ton of games. So yeah,
you better be good. If you complain, even though again, in a perfect world, everyone is entitled to an equal experience, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I only care if you're actually a top team and you get fucked over. Like, listen, nobody's restarting a bracket for some no-name team. I'm sorry, that is just, again, the way of the world. And also, you don't really have the leverage unless you're a famous team. That's just reality, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So that's the RMR chit-chat. I guess it's a good little way to segue into things that are happening right now. Breaking news today. There were a number of stories come out as we try and figure out what we're going to do in not just CSGO. I mean, it's going to affect all of esports, but this is a CSGO podcast. And that's going to be, what Russian players do in order to continue to compete. And so there was a report over at eScore News. The veracity of their report, I can't confirm. I don't know anything about them or about the people that wrote up this report. I think it was originally reported in cybersport.ru. So as you know, we've talked about them before. They are a dog shit rag that misquote people for clicks and never correct the record. So they are not a responsible publication. Make of that what you will.
Just look up the video on this channel, isn't it called like Russian Defense League or something?
Yeah, Navi Defense League deployed.
I'll have everything you need to know about that.
Yeah, and I'm guessing actually they were at it again because I did a video. Well, I did a live stream talking about that Navi spot fixing incident, with the machine gun and everything. And basically on my channel, that video got downvoted into oblivion, and tons of Russian comments. If maybe I've got one of them up on Deep L still. There was one basically saying that, classic, my toothless whore of a mother or something. It was pretty good. Anyway, yeah, a classic, a hood classic. But anyway, so they've said that Munazi is looking to change his citizenship so he can continue to play unimpeded with G2 esports, and that his preference would be Serbia. Obviously, Serbia itself sort of became a bit of a hub during the pandemic for a lot of teams. They created offices and facilities out there. Why? Because it's central to Europe, and it was one of the countries that had the fewest restrictions and was easier to get in and out of. And honestly, as well, I mean, I've been there, seen the apartment, seen the infrastructure. It's got good internet, good housing. So, makes sense. Cloud9 were there as well for a time, back when they had a CS team. So, I think that's the first report that we had. And then I think it was mentioned in a report we did over at Deserto. Lewis Mira said, I'll just read you the quote. It's an article called Esports in Times of War, How Na'Vi Are Navigating the Ukraine Crisis. Great bit of writing, probably up there with Mira's best as he continues to develop as a journalist, and consider him a great colleague at Deserto. In the article, it says, some of the organization's Russian players are trying to escape the country while they still can, fearful of what might come next as the conflict drags on and can take many new forms. They think about changing citizenship if possible because they already understand what awaits them in the near future. So, again, without sort of, it's speculation on this point, but how likely do you think these moves are? And do you think we've identified at least a potential way that a team like Na'Vi and a team like G2 can remain as unaffected as possible by what's going on?
The key to me is the distinction you make like that, which is if you are on the level of Monacy because he's in G2 or Na'Vi because it's fucking Na'Vi, like for those orgs, first of all, on their end, it's worth it for the investment probably to secure these people, etc. For the players, they will earn so much more money if they can play in esports. I think that's a part people also haven't thought about with these sanctions, is effectively you are going to take a whole class of people who had an incredible ability to earn outside of their culture, and you are now going to essentially say you're locked into that culture, and spoiler, we're tanking the economy. So, like, I don't think people realize, like, if you're a top-level Russian pro, you actually probably should at least consider this. The only part that I am concerned about is it will still obviously depend, like, will you have to spend X amount of months outside of the country, in which case if you're someone like Monacy who's 16 years old, that could take an enormous mental toll on you, just be away from your family all that time. By the way, there's even a world in which I hope they would understand, but people might even be actually like offended that you're going to give up your Russian citizenship. Remember, that means things to people. A lot of people in the modern day in Western countries, it might mean fuck all to you. You might just move to America, wherever you feel like. To certain countries, these are obviously ones where people have very strong feelings about whether you're like a patriotic, etc. So that might actually, to us, we might say, well, they just do it for the money, aren't they? It's like that, they might not think that back home, mate. So to me, I don't know. I feel like people like Monacy and Narvi, if they could, probably will and maybe should. For some of the others, though, I think once you go down to even the VP level, and it starts to get mad questionable for me as to whether you should do it. Like, especially in cases where you're just like one guy who might have to live outside the country, just be there on your own. The rest of, like, that's a lot to ask. That is a lot to ask.
It is, and it's for me, like it's one of those things where you can't walk this back. This decision that you're making is one to be allowed to compete as an esports professional, but it is one that's going to have a profound impact in your life down the road somewhere. God
forbid the Russians ever get wind of this and say, like, we're banning you from ever coming back if you gave it up, because that's on the table, boys. That's not impossible, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going to go with it. I've seen a number of I've seen instances like this occur where people have given up a nationality, to go somewhere else, and depending on the circumstances within, it's the view of, because obviously if you try and get a passport with a country, they're in all your shit. There's no secrets at that point. There's no road back potentially. So I think a lot of these players are making a big decision now.
Oh yeah, if people don't know, I know a lot of countries. I think ours even does this, dude. A lot of countries, if you don't know, don't allow dual citizenship unless, like, your actual birth parent or whatever also has that, and you technically were already considered like a dual. Essentially, as far as I know, a lot of places you actually do have to give up your original one to get the next one. So it would also depend on the country.
I don't know if that applies here. I mean, it might be as simple as a dual citizenship, in which case, that's fine. The question becomes, because we don't even know which way the wind's blowing with some of these TOs, and I don't want to dwell on the point because we covered it a lot in the last episode, but I'm seeing things that don't make sense to me, mate. In the news, and people going to extremes that don't make any sense. For example, today I saw a story. The Montreal Symphony Orchestra just dropped a Russian piano prodigy, from working for them, even though he was publicly outspoken against the war. It's like, how does that help anybody? And what purpose does that serve? And so, there's gonna be that, we're gonna get a clearer idea of where certain TOs are gonna draw the line. I mean, there might be some, like, I distinctly get the impression from Blast that it would, let's say Gambit, for example, all went tomorrow and got Serbian citizenship. They're still not going to be allowed to compete. Wouldn't matter. Because they're saying it's not about that. They're saying it's about the org. So now what people are saying is you've got to leave the orgs.
Yes.
And if you do that, then you're taking a massive risk.
I hate people who say that like it's frivolous, though. Like, just leave the team then. Like, I think you said it best, didn't you? Like, just choose unemployment. And we're like, what the fuck? Like,
I mean, listen, I will go into a little story that happened, since again we got time. So this is exactly it, right? I had we put the episode of By the Numbers out, the last By the Numbers. and somebody in the comments, a long-term subscriber, again, someone who's clearly mentally ill. So it's always good to fucking not have those people in your orbit because they're fucking just weirdos, and you know, the shit this guy was saying was unreal. So he said the players should just leave these orgs, these oligarch orgs, and it's like, okay, the expectation now is that those players walk out of their jobs at a time when their economy's collapsing and there's not going to be a lot of opportunities. I even imagine the economic impacts of what's happening are coming to esports as well. I imagine we'll see a number of smaller orgs tank. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, by the way, that these oligarchs, as they look to scale back anything that costs them money with all of the sanctions and asset seizures that are coming, even the big ones, it could be a Virtus Pro shuts down. You don't know.
Case, you might not even have needed to sanction VP. That would be the first thing you'd cut off the fucking thing. It's like I said on the last one, especially the orgs that lose money on esports. You cut that instantly, wouldn't you?
Yep. So that's that's all on the table as a potential thing that happens in the next few weeks. And so this guy puts this comment, they should just leave the teams. And I went, yeah, just choose unemployment. You know, it's like, no one, you have to be a very principled person to essentially walk your way into poverty for a principle. Not many people will do that. Some do. We've done it. I wouldn't call it poverty. I mean, that's really overselling.
Oh, no, but we turned down a lot of money.
We've turned down money, yeah, you know, but this is something else. We've done that when we've got savings or other opportunities on the table. You don't know if any of those things are forthcoming for a Russian CS player right now. And keep in mind, these are people who have absolutely said the war is bullshit. We don't support it. We stand with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
I'm not aware of a single pro from Russia who's in any way sounded positive about the war.
I've had Russian and Ukrainian players in my DMs are like talking about how scared and concerned they are for the future and everything else. As far as I can tell, there's not one hardline Putin supporter in all of CSGO. And if there are, they're keeping it very well hidden. So keep that in mind while people continue to fucking dogpile these players. But anyway, so this guy wrote that. I replied. And then he said, but you said in your video that there aren't elegant solutions to this problem. I know. You can immediately see the problem, right?
I know.
So I said, yes, exactly. So it isn't as simple as just leave LOL, just leave 5-head LOL. That doesn't fix there are no elegant solutions, exactly. So anyway, he went on HLTV and made a thread. Is Richard Lewis the best example of the Dunning-Kruger effect of all time?
What a non sequitur this title is as well. Like, what?
And in it, he said that I contradicted myself by pointing out the layers and the nuance somehow by saying there are no elegant solutions. His elegant solution of just leave 5-head LOL, he couldn't understand. And he said he does this a lot in his videos. He talks about things. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He gets lots of things wrong. And this was like, it went to 60, 70 comments before, I mean, half of which were his lunatics, before it got deleted. And then he came back to the YouTube channel after it was deleted and was like spamming, say, a guy that's followed my work for years, just totally gone off the deep end because I've just said, like, you can't just expect these guys to walk away from gainful employment.
I even think that everyone's missing a really serious point here. Like, how has everyone missed this point, by the way? The reason why the people who do the sanctions can effectively just steal the property and money of Russians is because they're in another fucking country, you idiots. Imagine being a Russian pro, Richard, who lives in Russia, plays for, say, Virtus Pro, and then you're just going to go, see this contract that's under Russian law and would count in all Russian courts, which, spoiler, I'm still in Russia. I'm just going to break this because we've been sanctioned. Well, that would still apply in fucking Russia, you moron. He can't. How does he just live his life without having any court problems? Now, yes, it's unlikely the orgs are going to go fucking ham on you because, spoiler, almost no one's going to leave like this. But, like, it isn't as simple as that. It's like, the joke is, here's like, just do this. Or just unravels the first part of a giant ball of yarn that no one knows where it goes and all the implications and how fucking difficult it would be. And also, who's going to pick you up and how do you sign a contract with them and how is that enforced and where you're going to live. Oh, the joke is, like, it's like that old thing where, have you noticed how a moron always puts the word just before the most complicated possible operation that they couldn't explain? It's like, just do this. Like, There's no just about it, is it, mate? That'd be the entire task would be figure out how this would even work. And I don't really know how you just break a contract tomorrow, especially when, as you saw from orgs like VP, they ain't letting go, mate. They ain't going out for the PR, will let you go. They're going to make you force their hand.
Yeah, I mean, they are happy to take the negative PR hit to sort of retain some weird fucking machismo, we will not be bullied, kind of, we will not be intimidated kind of nonsense. And it's like, listen, this is definitely not the time for that. I mean, Virtus.pro have handled this thing terribly, and I can't imagine how they would have any sort of good faith from the fans. Now, it's left a real sour taste in my mouth, what they said. But yeah, ultimately, it's not as simple as walking away from a fucking salary, walking away potentially, like you say, because you don't just walk away and get a new org in Europe. There'll be a buyout. You're still under contract. Even if you don't get fined, or fucked over by the org for not playing, you're now expecting another team to come in and buy a Russian player right now. Meet a buyout for a Russian player right now with all of the problems you're going to have getting them a visa and everything. No one's going to do that. That kind of move is off the table, no matter how good you are.
Yes. So, and I've got another angle people haven't thought about either, Richard.
Yeah, what's up?
If the Russian player still lives in Russia, how are you ever going to pay him to play for this European org? Currently, there are no means by which you can send the money, as far as I can tell. PayPal doesn't work, banks are all how would this European or American org even pay you to play for them? You know what I mean? The joke is, that's why I say it's a massive ball of yarn. If this moron had ever sort of taken his own thought, then went, right, go to the next step, he'd realise all these issues, but he's just gone right, well, my step solves it all, doesn't it? Just leave.
Yeah. So, and also not to mention as well, like, I've got to make this abundantly clear just to underline it. While it won't affect the Russian players, in these mixed teams, the Russian-Ukraine teams, that have historically been based in Kiev, that can't happen now.
Oh, that's over, yeah.
Yeah, you can't go. I mean, first of all, obviously, while the conflict continues, it's not safe. But as well, as we know, if Simple was to return to his country tomorrow, he's going to be conscripted. And listen, I've read some fucking childish nonsense on Reddit, where it's like, people are saying if you don't go back and fight.
Oh, give me a break.
Yeah, I know. Like, some
as a general rule,
fedora tipping Redditor,
Could we all maybe not tell other people what really serious life decisions to take with their lives that they will carry all the can for liability for? Meanwhile, we're just fucking guys just saying shit on the internet that have no consequences. Like, give me a break. You go and fight a fucking war, random guy. You want to do that to you? Who does? Yeah. I don't blame anyone who chooses to go away from conflict. Why would you?
Yeah, and it's like...
And it's simple. Why would you want him to join a fucking war, you idiot? Do you not want him to live or play CS? Why would you even want him to be in danger?
It's mad, like. So, I've seen so much fucking nonsense. But back to the point. Do you think, that this is kind of something we will see? Like, do you think essentially we found a way for G2 and Na'Vi to sort of, survive this issue and remain the lineups that we want them to remain?
I feel like it's one of those examples of where, like, it probably is technically possible to do what they're talking about. It sounds like there might be an avenue, but my issue is like we were talking about just a minute ago, who realistically would want to do it though? Like, would they be willing to take all the downside? I'll give you an obvious example, and you're not going to want to hear this if you're an Na'Vi fan. The whole thing everyone says the second you say the name Electronic is, oh, he has a child and that. Exactly. So he's not going to want to be out of the country 9 months a year. This guy's not going to want to be with his family, presumably. So think about even people like fucking Hobbit. This is obviously Kazakhstan, but he has a family back home. Like, I don't think it's as simple as people realize. The difference is, I think Monesi is probably the ideal candidate because he's so young, he's barely had a career, and he's in an amazing earning opportunity where, because he's the one player, they could even essentially just have people just take care of just him. Like, just make sure, or constant contact, blah, blah, blah. The difference is, with like the Na'Vi players, for example, like, again, like, I can't really see how all three of them say yes. And then again, what do you do in Na'Vi? You have to have the team based in another place. It feels like as much as I want all these players to get the chance to play, I think it's going to end up being too much of a price to pay for some of them, mate. What do you think? You think they do it?
I think they have to. Look, The reality is this. I think the G2 one is the easier fix. If you can get a 16-year-old to reconcile with potentially you're not going home for a while.
Isn't it? That's such a wild concept to fucking put before someone. I don't even feel as though you could actually make the choice and sort of like, I don't know if a 16-year-old can make that choice for himself, Richard. Like I wasn't mature enough at 16 to know if I could, even if I would want that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of a warped perspective on it because I was out of the house at 16. But that doesn't happen to kids these days, you know. But you know, so I just was like, yeah, obviously. But you know, it's not just that you're 16 and you don't see your friends and your family. Maybe I don't know what kind of relationship he's got, you know. But imagine he's going to be close with his parents. You would have to think. I don't even know if he's got any siblings. But also, you know, you're now being moved into a very different culture, and we've seen time and time again. We've seen teenagers who have been living abroad. And it's the combination of everything. It's missing your friends, missing your family, not being able to engage in like normal things, you know, going on fucking dates, you know, like just having a normal life. And you can't do any of that. And on top of that, the only people you see are your teammates and your managers. And you might be speaking a second language you're not particularly comfortable in the whole time. Yep. You might not be able to get any of the creature comforts you can back home, your favorite food, your favorite drinks. You know, and obviously if you're 16, can't even really go out or do anything. There's no sort of like, you can't even drown your fucking sorrows, can you? Not that I would ever advise that. See earlier introduction at the start of the episode. But, you know, the point is, like, there's a reason why guys like Obo, it's happened to, Smooya, it's happened to, you know, and they're all at that age where the pull of home is way stronger than when you get, you know, when you get a little bit older and you want to be a bit more worldly. So if they do this and Munazi does this, and I trust G2 to handle it, obviously. I think they're one of the best orgs in the world. I think they are one of the best orgs in terms of how they look after their players and insulate them. But you're asking a huge ask of a teenager, and I hope if there are any subsequent problems, the loving CS community would at least be supportive and give him a little bit of a leeway. Like, everything that's happened, if he does this, he's entitled to one meltdown, guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Without you kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah, there's two things to say to that. One, on the last point you just said there, one thing I'm so fucking sick of is when you put forward any sort of a nuanced take about the fact that like Russian players who are unrelated to Putin might be affected, blah, blah. You know, when people just use that lazy ass thing and they just go, "Well, tell that to Putin." You're not even contributing to a conversation, you imbecile. Yeah. You're literally not saying anything there. Like that's not even how like logic works. Like, you've just picked one point in the chain and gone. By that logic, by the way, think about how unreasonable this would be. I could go, well then what about the people who did things that Putin says provoked them? Like, that would be the same fucked up logic, wouldn't it? Like, all you're doing is just moving the chain of the burden of responsibility back. In this particular case, we're pointing out that directly young people unrelated to this matter, just due to nationality, will be affected in a potentially negative way for their life and or career. And then the other thing to say is this. Another reason why I would be very wary if I was in his situation is if you look at the current climate of the world, think about the thing Richard said earlier about how they were getting rid of this like Russian musician. I've even heard mad stories where people in America were doing mad shit, like just firing their Russian mate because she's Russian. Like, in a world where that stuff like that's going to potentially amplify, depending on what happens with the conflict, you also just might get hated on if you're fucking Russian. Like, guess what? I don't want to break anyone's mind if they're unaware of world history, but Serbs aren't the biggest fans of Russians necessarily. Guess what? A lot of people in that area aren't because of the 20th century. So unfortunately, if we're going to get essentially, I won't use the whole phobe thing because I think that whole fucking premise of just taking what should be medical terms and inventing them and just applying them to things you don't like, it's kind of whack. But the idea that people will be like essentially biased against Russians, that might be a very real increasing prospect. And I don't want to be a 16-year-old foreigner on my own in fucking Serbia or whatever, and then ever have to face that, especially for something I never did and was uninvolved. And I'm even going on my way to explicate myself from it to get the fuck out.
Yep. So the Na'Vi situation, it didn't stipulate what nationality it would be. I mean, they're in Poland at the moment, I imagine. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know enough about what the Polish immigration system is like. I think I read something about them, like they were open to Ukraine immigration, and we're looking to fast track some of the refugees as relocating on a permanent basis. Whether they would apply that same principle to Russians that wanted to get out of Putin's Russia, I don't know.
Actually, I suspect not, based on what I've seen. Like, I won't go into too much, but basically, I have some people I know who live in Russia and know a little bit more about this topic. Basically, as far as I know, if you were Russian, it was very difficult recently to get to any other country. Like, a lot of the people who were able to, essentially, like people who lived in Crimea and had the dual citizenship, they just used the Ukrainian passport, and that was how they were able to get out, etc. So I suspect, unfortunately, that wouldn't work for the like electronic boom, itch, perfecto, etc. I suspect, at least.
Yeah.
Understandably, because if the whole premise is to not have Russians come out and sanction them, stuff, yeah, that's what they're doing, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I mean, but I think that basically, they're going to have to explore this option, or there really is no way the team can stay together in any kind of conceivable. Like you say,
that's just the end. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, because those visas are going to run out for the Russian players. They are not going to be granted again, and so that's the end of it. Yep. at that point. So they do have to do something if they want to continue. Now, I've seen people speculating, by the way, that what will happen is that the two teams that are going to be negatively impacted by this, that have non-Russian players, i.e. Virtus.pro and Na'Vi, might try and combine and make some sort of super team moving forward, just to sort of keep competing free from the problems. I don't think we're there yet. I think you need to realistically explore every avenue.
That's a pretty extreme option to take there.
Yeah, I think you need to explore every avenue. And Na'Vi aren't shy of money. No doubt about that. They can definitely hire the best kind of immigration lawyers and everything else to work something out. But it is wild that it's sort of come to this just to compete. And obviously, bigger questions are brought up about Gambit. What do they do?
If people don't know, because this is a problem in CS I've seen the whole time since Gambit got good, Richard, because the team was at one point #1 in the world and won everything. People did that thing where they think that means the company is #1 and has enormous. Like, no, Gambit is not a massive org. I don't think people get this still. They're actually punching way above their weight to this day. So I actually don't know with that org. Like, would it even be worth all the costs, especially if you really are somehow based in Russia? Like, I don't know if there's any. It's basically just over for that team as far as I can tell. Except maybe Hobbit. Basically, unless you're from Kazakhstan, I don't know. I think you're just over if you're Russian, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, they've not said anything at all about what the future looks like for them. So
I did have one aside though, which is this. In theory, I'm almost reticent to say this just because cunts like ESL might actually even take notes. You can even use this as a fucked up way to take a win that everyone's been so balls deep in China and fucking Middle East recently, Richard, in esports business. Because in theory, you could probably still hold an event in Dubai and have the Russian teams go or something. There's a way you could get around it. Like, put it this way. The reason I've been thinking about that topic is because I was just thinking when I was watching that UFC thing, like, well, how can I get hyped about all these fights? Oh, wait, no, the UFC's going to... Because you know what they'll do. They'll just go to wherever's available. So I'm no doubt they'll just only schedule like fucking those Russian fighters to fight in like fucking Dubai or it'll be those countries they'll have those fights in. It just won't be in America, obviously.
Certainly that wouldn't have been an option prior to the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund buying ESL. That absolutely wouldn't be an option. The money wouldn't have been there to do this.
Yeah.
One of the reasons.
Pivot though.
Yeah, one of the reasons why you would, they have the events where they have them is there's already existing infrastructure, therefore take advantage of. It's why we have, they've just built, they've had a studio in Katowice for a couple of years now, where it's like very much a state-of-the-art studio for what they're doing. And so why would I want to send people to, they're even talking about doing more and more events remotely where you go to Katowice, you sit in the studio, and you're doing a desk segment in Katowice for an event that's taking place somewhere else. That was where ESL were heading. I don't know if the having more money than God now fucking changes that.
And by the way, that is a real plan they had. That isn't some like by the numbers anti-Thorin doctrine meme where it's like, and all analyst tests will take place in Katowice, St. Paul. No. That wasn't like they designed it just for me. That's a real thing. Look, there's an obvious reason why it's a cost-cutting measure than holding it in forever Germany or whatever the fuck it is. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, again, that's entirely possible, but then you have to ask yourself, how viable is it if you can't, right? So the Blast can't do that, right? True. So now, and maybe ESL do it as a cynical move where it's like, listen, we got you covered, Louvre teams. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to do moving forward. My read is that Na'Vi will maybe get some nationality switched up, and like you say, the point about the electronic is completely valid. Like, what do you do if you're him and you've got a kid at home?
He's in a very tough spot because think about it, if you're a random fan, think about this. His choice is either potentially be constantly away from my family, in which case, what's the point in working anyway? Or I could be with my family, but I can't work, therefore I make fuck all money compared to what you like. Mate, there's no good choice there. They both fucking suck, don't they?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So again, we'll probably know in the next week or two which way they're going to go on it, but there's still a lot of huge question marks, and fortunately, the only thing we've got to worry about at the moment is just the Pro League. Yes. They've already made their determination about what's going on, although I still don't think we've had clarification on what Gambit are doing.
I don't think anyone said anything at all.
Yeah, we know that the Virtus Pro team will be competing under the name Outsiders with the Virtus Pro roster. There will not be any branding. There will not be any... they will be completely separate from Virtus Pro. I don't even know if they're still going to get paid or not, because obviously you could make an argument it's not even an argument. If you're the organization,
you're not getting at that point.
Yeah, you're not getting any benefit. So the players might just be competing just to compete, and they might not even be making the salary, or whatever. So have to watch that space.
By the way, I love how dumb Reddit is. Let's just take a quick sidebar chapter in chapter 1 million of how dumb Reddit is. Right. I saw on that post, the one that was about the official announcement that the VP players will play under the name Outsiders, right? There was the whole discussion, this was upvoted as well, of people going sort of like, sounds like they're being a bit antagonistic with that name. Right. Let's just put this down a second, guys. We've just banned their whole fucking country from anyone with an esports team from being allowed to even use that esports team in an event. But they're petty if they just name the team something you just think is like slightly off. Not even like an offensive name or something. Just slightly off. Because their whole thing was like, the Outsiders because they've been pushed out. It's like, give me a fucking break. Does it never end? Like, you are aware, by the way, this is one thing I hate about this whole thing. There isn't just one side. Like, if you think you're on the right side, you're wrong. There isn't one side. Guess what? The side moves depending on the circumstances. So if we're talking about, like, the conflict, maybe you are on a certain side. If we're talking about, like, Jim from Virtus Pro, and does he get sanctioned by a tournament? That has nothing to do with the conflict anymore in that isolated scenario. And in that scenario, James the victim, in my opinion. Obviously debatable, but you see what I mean? Like, I think people... That's one thing in general I've hated about this whole thing, mate, is that the people, as usual, who are almost making it sound like they're the empathetic ones, are like the ones with the least compassion for anyone. They're the ones who just want to make it a fucking witch hunt in a different direction, it feels like.
Yeah.
I can understand why they feel aggrieved that they have to do this and know their careers are probably fucking over soon.
Yeah. I mean, you get to see a lot of that. To answer your question, does it ever end? Of course it doesn't.
Oh, of course not.
No, of course not. So yeah, as I said, more on that as that story develops. There wasn't a lot of super interesting roster moves. I feel that we touched upon Smooya's stuff last time. He's obviously officially in free agency now. Be interesting to see where he goes. Word on the street, of course, is that he's got options in Valorant potentially as well.
Oh, makes sense.
And he's been playing that game. I don't know, man. I just feel like, I look at what's happening with Fnatic right now, and it's just staggering to me.
There's something more behind that whole thing we clearly haven't even touched on yet. Like, I'm saying it as in I don't even have any inside info. Like, something about the order of what they've done in this scenario doesn't make sense to me still.
Yeah, it doesn't either. And obviously they've got Poison as a stand-in at the moment, which is like, just crazy, really, that's kind of come out of left field. And, he's obviously one of those players that kind of slipped through the cracks with the whole complexity fallout. Was playing like really, really well at one point in his career, but like everybody, towards the end of the complexity era, it didn't work out. I mean, I think they're talking about him as a stand-in. I think there's potential there for a permanent move. I feel that like he's a good enough player, but currently, as I said, they're all over the place. Brolan still hasn't been playing in Pro League. So you have to suspect he's definitely still going to NIP. Device hasn't come back for NIP yet. Like, I don't know, man. So many different weird, fucked up parts up in the air. But I know you know the management of Fnatic quite well. I am trying to imagine a scenario where they could have handled this worse.
Oh, that's what I mean. Like, there's the weird thing about it. Right? So, for example, I'm sure later we're going to talk about Astralis. At least when Astralis does something fucked up, I can sort of reverse engineer what their motivation might be and how it benefits them. The problem I have with this scenario here is that in collection, the totality of the events don't seem to spot out an actual pattern, and then I don't see what they're getting out of it at the end of it. Like, this just seems like you've almost sabotaged the team, like you say. Like, the joke is like this would almost be like a rogue GM wants Fnatic out of CSGO or something. Like, surely these would be the actions you'd take.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just totally. It's really weird, and it's like. I don't know. I don't know if people realize like just how fucked up it is, like how disruptive this whole thing has been. Like, I get it. The reality is, yes, if you're beholden to players and a player comes to you and says, "Listen, I can't play with this guy anymore. I'm gonna quit," and they're absolutely adamant about that, there's not really a lot you can do except in that moment make a choice or a decision. But I'd be more inclined to be like, if we acquiesce to this, we're setting a precedent that forever the players can essentially dictate the roster. And in that point, you know what it's going to be like. It's going to be a fucking shit show, just a revolving door. Anytime someone pisses the other off, it's a kicking is potentially on the table. You're going to end up with a 2015 French scene, and who the fuck wants to manage that?
Look at what's happened here. So from the outside, we have to pretend these are all separate incidents. Maybe they are. Yeah. Maybe really the Brolan thing's unconnected to the Smoothie thing. Well, if that's the case, that's also why, by the way, you don't let players run your fucking org. Because you kick someone, right? Listen, you could have brought in a Poison as you stand in and you could see if the team works without Smoothie, right? You'll now never know how the team works because at the same time that you are making moves to placate some players, your best player wants to leave. You play with all the prospect. Brolan is now wants to go to your rival. Well, again, like, who was the GM here? Like, did you not think through what happens after I move him and who do I put? Like, it seems almost like they're just oblivious to what's happening next themselves, mate.
Yeah, totally. So, and like you say, I mean, the reality is what it does in terms of motivation to the people who are still on the roster if Fnatic sell Brolan. Like Alex even said in the interviews, like, I'm working with Mezzi and Brolan, like two like amazing young players. Yeah, exactly. We got a veteran in Crims. It was a big reason as to why he was motivated to join. And just on that point, again, chapter 1,000,001 in why Reddit are fucking morons. Of course, in the thread relating to their ESL Pro League defeat on the first day of the competition, there were people in there basically saying, Alex has ruined another team. It's like they're playing with 3 stand-ins. Like, what do you want?
And it was intimated that it was a Swedish player who wanted Smoothie out, not Alex.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Use the referral called Bald Egg.
Yeah, exactly.
To get 10%
that's also why it's such a misplay, in my opinion, based on what we currently know, Richard. Right? If the premise goes, we're kicking Smoothie because Crims doesn't want to play with him. Well, I'm going to guess Crims probably wanted to play with fucking Brolan, you idiot. How's that going to work out next? What next? Because the problem is, I tell you what, here's a prediction for you. If Crims leaves Fnatic himself in the next 6 months, this is one of the biggest fails I've ever seen in roster creation. Because the joke will be, what did you give him up for at that point? What was it all for? Remember, if there's another thing, if I'm going to make a kick for you, by the way, sometimes, it's valid to do a kick. Like, the joke is, as much as he's an egotist, if I actually did have Nico on my team and he really was like, I'd hate playing with this guy, obviously obviously I'll give it more credence. It's fucking Nico. He's my main player. He's my superstar. But I tell you what, I wouldn't do it if he could just leave in 3 months. I'll be like, all right, I'll commit to you. I'll get you the players you want. Now you sign this nice fucking 2-year extension, mate. There we go. Everyone's happy. I'm not leaving it so you can go, well, it's been cool, everything, but this team's sort of shit now. We don't even have an AWPer. I'm off. Like, I'll never let myself get played like that. I'll tell you that.
Well, I'll also tell you, I don't even give it 6 months. I don't even give it 6 months.
It has the vibe about it. This whole team's going, mate.
Crims is going to go and join that fucking team with JW and Flusher, isn't he?
Makes sense, right?
Yeah. And then Olaf comes out of retirement, and they're going to get the band back together, and they're going to they'll get a ton of sponsorship.
Yeah.
They'll get a big org just off the back of that. Remember, they're still Freiburg's still fucking playing, for fuck's sake.
Fans, if you're Brazilian, you will see in that moment how even-handed this show is. Because guess what? I'll give that last dance a fucking roasting too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Especially if the big org and the big sponsors. I'll have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that really will be a fucking last dance. Jesus. I can see that happening 100%.
Yeah, I think it would make sense.
I think Crims is going to look at this team and he's just going to think, I can have a choice of playing on a patchwork roster with players that are okay, and we're not going to do anything internationally, and I'm coming to the end of my career, or I can go and fail and be in a similar spot in the world rankings with my old mates.
Yes.
Well, why wouldn't you?
And by the way, I'll even say, if people are interested to know more about the org in general, I'll even say they've actually shown this precedent of listening to players back in other games like League of Legends, one of the biggest they have. If people don't know, they essentially did exactly what's about to happen with the Crim scenario in League of Legends. They allowed Reckless, who was obviously the face of their franchise and the most legendary player they had, they essentially allowed him to, at least, I'll just say partially, influence potential moves of other teammates. And then the cunt just left himself. He just went, oh, well, now that you've made this whole team, I'm off anyway to go join our rivals. Lol. Same scenario. He went to their direct rival, just like he's going to go to NIP with Brawler now, or Crims might just go and make another team. So, again, if you're an org, more fool you if you just put your whole fucking org on the back of a player that can leave, mate. Like, what do you want? Like, that's some Jack of the Beanstalk shit, mate. You're an amateur. What are you doing?
Yep. So, Fnatic are probably, I think they're going to implode, but we'll wait and see. I mean, it's going to be predicated.
That's the most cursed fucking career I've seen in years at this point. He's really good as well. He actually seems really good at his job.
Remember, before all of this, they were winning tier 2 tournaments. They won back-to-back tier 2 tournaments that they entered, climbing up the rankings. We're knocking on the door, creeping back in the top 10. And also what's mad as well is right, I saw a clip the other day. I'm probably going to make a more in-depth video about this. But loads of people held up a clip and it was like Smooya barking, right? Because obviously Smooya barking during a clutch or whatever when they were hunting a player down. And loads of people were saying, oh, look at how annoyed Crims and fucking Brolan look while he's barking. That's obviously the problem, right? But then, the other day, there was another video of Mezzi barking.
Oh, I saw this one, yes.
Yeah, and everyone's laughing about it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, if you watched any of Smooya's streams after he got kicked, he said the barking thing was started by Alex, and so it's like you can't even participate in there was so little good faith there. You can't even participate in the camaraderie that was set up by somebody else because they just inherently dislike you. So I'd really like to know what it is he did.
Yeah, of course.
Because from my perspective, it's just that Smooya's hard work.
Yeah.
And that to me is not a good enough reason to kick somebody from a successful team.
And obviously the whole precedent we know about Swedes fucking want people who are just like them and all that jazz, and they seem to have the least sort of emotional bandwidth to deal with people who are excitable or annoying. I mean, crazy that, by the way, because if you go in American teams, there's plenty of annoying cunts in those teams.
Put it this way, obviously, in a past life, I've been a coach, been a manager, for source teams. And when we had a team that Henry G played on back when I was a manager at Four Kings, and we had a guy called Hoods G, who was a really good player in Source in the UK, but came with a notoriously ridiculous amount of you had to put in extra effort for him. Essentially,
high maintenance, right?
Yeah, very high maintenance. The most high maintenance player I've ever managed in any discipline ever. Right? Not in a bad way, because it was worth it because he was a lovely guy. But he had like OCD, like actual OCD, not the like self-diagnosed frivolous joke people say, like full OCD. I'm convinced as well he had like attention deficit disorder, and so he became so wrapped up every time we lost the game on how it was all his fault and how he needed to change things. And like I said, I used to get calls at 4 a.m. like, Gons, fucking, what resolution should I use on my monitor? I'm changing my resolution. What do you think's the best resolution? I'm like, mate, don't even fucking play. What are you talking about? I'm not a pro. Like, just stick to your shit. No, I got to change it. Mouse sensitivity, you know? And because he couldn't sleep the night of a fucking competition, we'd be sat in a hotel room, and obviously this is back in the day when everyone fucking shared 2-3 to a room, and so everyone else is trying to sleep, and Hoods is like wide awake going, do you think we'll win tomorrow, Rich? And I have to read this motherfucker a bedtime story, do you know what I mean, to get him off the bed? And but it was worth it. Now, I imagine Smoothie is very much like that. I imagine he's high maintenance, hard work, chatty, like mad energy. But, you know, my read on him is, as he's got older, he's a guy that kind of like wants to fit in, wants to belong, just wants to be part of, like, you know, wants his input to be valued as well. That's part of being in the in group, right? And he just doesn't seem to get this. And I've seen a lot of people jump to assumptions that he must have done something cataclysmically wrong. Just keep in mind, when they dropped him the first time when he was on trial and they just cut him out some games and brought Regali in for a few games, I know the public messaging was it was always meant to be like that. I am telling you, it was not always meant to be like that. Something even happened at their inception, and then they went ahead and decided we'll get over it anyway and we'll play with Smoothie regardless. And it worked. It worked. That team was massively improved by his presence there. And, I'm just sick and tired of fucking players that, if you're a little bit different, a little bit hard work, a little bit high maintenance, you know, I've nearly finished my simple article. It's something like 2 weeks to write. And what I'm talking about is like how we exist in a very unforgiving space. Where the community just want to kick the shit out of everyone. Unless you are the best, then you will be allowed to get away with it. Anything less than that, and you will never be forgiven for any transgression, even if it's one that, you know, just sort of happens along the way. Like, we just make mistakes over the course of our lives, bad judgment decisions, you know. But one of the things I talk about in the article is the complete lack of mentorship, like genuine mentorship in the esports space. Like, it just doesn't happen. Where are all the old veterans that are like taking young players under their wing and actually like letting them be difficult and letting them be, you know, letting them grow and letting them develop and like make those mistakes and having them shield them? Basically, the closest I've sort of seen to stuff like that is, again, getting back to G2. Carlos understands it better than almost anybody, but it's fucked up. And so there'll never be a place for a guy with Smoothie's personality in a team if the team is just allowed to kick anyone that's like even slightly difficult. And Fnatic, shame on the management for letting it go that way, in my opinion, because it's to the detriment of the fans, it's to the detriment of the squad. And I guarantee Crims will not be there by the end of the year. That
doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. I'll be amazed if he's still there.
Here as well, that thing you were describing where, like, especially people on Reddit are notorious for this, where they try and like freeze frame a fucking video and like that fucking, you remember that show they did in like the fucking 2010s or whatever, called like Lie to Me or whatever, where the whole thing was he could like fucking see micro reactions or whatever, and he could like infer if the guy was like lying or something. They act like they're that guy, mate. I know, yeah. Like, if people don't know, the famous example I always
was it Tim Roth in fucking Lie to Me or whatever, yeah.
Because what's his name? Anders himself even used to always bring this example up as to how clueless fans are. Because whenever back in the day, commentators used to come on the desk when it was like me and Rich, and we was just cycling people at the event who were free, basically. When Anders would come on the desk, people would always put comments, right, saying that they could tell Anders was really uncomfortable by me, that he didn't like any of my humor, and that he clearly secretly despised me. Anders himself used to bring that up because of how literally opposite that is to the reality, which is that he used to think it was hilarious. And if you don't know, he's clever at hiding it. He has one of the darkest sense of humor. He loves all that shit. He even, by the way, is one of those people who genuinely doesn't take it at all to heart if you roast him. He's totally cool with it. He's kind of just at peace with it in some weird way. So the mad thing is, it was like a total misread. But that's because, yes, guess what? It's some weird fucking anorak cunt in a fucking bedroom somewhere, freeze framing a video, and then trying to like infer about parasocial relationships of people who've never met his entire life. I don't know how people can still think they can watch like a video of someone on a talk show and then go, I know who they are. I don't like them as a human being. Like, holy shit, guys.
Well,
like, what lens have you seen them through, for fuck's sake?
So I'll read you this, and then we'll segue into talking about Astralis, because we're going to get into some insane shit there. But obviously, in this article, I've called it the icon that nearly wasn't, right? Talking about Simple. And I went through and I looked at some of the comments from back when Simple had his, mistakes, let's say. Now, look, I'm not standing by shit he did, obviously. There was stuff that, it basically, imagine something that would get you cancelled effectively in the modern era. Simple did them all pretty much.
Yeah.
And, and obviously, but he took his licks for it. And there was, and so I went back and I got all of the comments that were essentially, done by users. Many of them on Reddit now.
Some of these are amazing.
I love Simple.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just read you this one. This retarded kid never learns, and he thought this would go unnoticed. I'm so happy he's without a team. He literally does not deserve to be part of one. Yes, he's skilled, but having an attitude and childish behaviors like that will still beat his skill abilities, and no team will want him with such a weak, untrustful personality. I'm also hoping that the whole CSGO scene with all the pros gets to know about this incident and keep him in mind when they play Face It Pugs. I'd appreciate top players refusing to even play Pugs with him, and maybe then it'll click in his 10-year-old brain what is really valuable in life once he's all alone. Fantastic.
Oh, that's so dark at the end, isn't it? It's like, he's a kid, wasn't this when he's like 18 years old? Yeah. Probably young, he's probably like 16 or 17 when this happened. Fucking hell, guys.
That's what, so I went and got all of these, comments like, oh yeah, to sort of contrast. And it's like, yeah, man, we just don't fucking, we're just ruthless. Look, we're not us. I mean, listen, we probably fucking roast him with I think all of our roasts have been pretty much decent. Probably a few that have been unreasonable. Like I say, I'm willing to accept that maybe the Smoothie thing was a bit unreasonable at the time, although he will always be the Rat King. That will never change, for he is the Rat King. And, but, in general, like, I can be reflective. But I think most of it's been like, this guy fucked up. This is how no one else is kind of talking about it. Let's make sure that it's sort of preserved for the record historically in some small way. But in general, some of these fucking 180s people have done. And they just justify it by saying, but he was bad then. And you're like, yeah, but you weren't allowing him a chance to be good ever again. Over things that, not the worst things in the world. Let's put it that way. So anyway, talking about worst things in the world, let's talk about Astralis. I did promise in the last episode, sensing that a filler episode would be coming, that we would talk about our old friend Nicola Nyholm.
This is the ultimate filler episode topic, though. If you see how much material, how hilarious it is, and just like, if you're a fan, by the way, who doesn't know what we're referring to, you don't even know what's coming down the pipe in a second. It's going to be unreal. This is like, it's almost like Nicola Nyholm did this just for this show to give us material. Like that. Yes. It's that outrageous and unnecessary.
So back at the end of last month, Nicola there was a hashtag trending. Which was Vit Out. And when I say trending, I mean that in the loose. It's probably trending in Denmark, a few hundred people, but trending to him. And basically, for those who followed the show, who Casper shit is, but if you don't, we're happy to tell you, Casper Vit was a former handball player who was hired by Nicola Nyholm to be the head of like the esports divisions in their org, and basically put in place training regimes and all of that stuff to make them the best teams in the world. Now, of course, that's fucking hilarious, because at the time of recording this, their team's just like gone out of Katowice, 9th to 12th or whatever it was, pretty bad. Their League of Legends team is absolute rock bottom.
Worse than the whole LEC.
Yeah, but they have at least have won maps now. They're up to 3, I think. And obviously their FIFA org hasn't really done anything. They got a Rainbow Six team that is going to finish last. They're North American because they merged with them. So in other words, they don't even represent excellence anymore, Astralis. They represent like just a bunch of morons running a good brand into the fucking ground. And so people are saying Casper Hit has to go. The fans are saying this. Why? Because it's well documented. I've done reporting on it. We'll definitely get to that over the course of this rant from Nicola Nyholm. That, a lot of the tensions that happened within that org at that time that saw players leave and move on to pastures new, it was because they didn't want to fucking work with this guy. And this is even acknowledged by Nicola Nyholm in this post. So I think it's important that we talk about it, but it is long, guys. As I told you, he's done like a 3,000-word fucking essay here. So, yes, when we say Ultimate Filler episode, strap yourselves in, because me and Duncan are going. And I feel like Rod Serling should introduce this fucking segment. Picture a man completely divorced from reality. But thinks, whatever. Rod Serling is a better writer than me. Anyway. So here it is. He posted this on dust2.tk. As I said, didn't even put a press release out, didn't record a video like some narcissistic CEOs might do, didn't do any of that shit. Took to the hotbed, the hub of activity that is dust2.tk forums.
Basically, this is Nicola Nyholm rocking up going, "What up, fellow kids?" And he's so whack because he thinks this is like grassroots, like behavior. If I can get to the real fans though and tell them what's going on, they'll appreciate my transparency and the way I understand their youth culture. Like, he's like some character out of the fucking Simpsons or something. I can't believe he's a real man. He's so outrageous, isn't he?
Yeah. Rapidly becoming a Vince McMahon.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I figure I'm waiting for him to get massive jacked and juiced. Anyway, so here we go. Right. For several reasons, I typically do not get, and this is Nicola Nyholm, by the way. For several reasons, I typically do not get involved in the debates anymore. But unfortunately, in some circles, the story is built up about Astralis, and especially Casper Fit, which is based on a lack of insight and stories created by people with their own agenda.
Interesting. I like the way we just get subtweeted by this on like a daily. Every time he mentions something, it's outrageous.
Mate, I know. He's never got over me blocking it. It broke him. God, literally, he was in my DMs saying, "We could talk and maybe work this out," and I've just gone like, "Don't DM me, you mad cunt. Fuck off."
Like, in general, I'm not a huge fan of that whole like rent free. We do absolutely live rent free in this content, though. It's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Anyway, by the way, just jump in anytime, Duncan, to add your commentary.
Sure.
That's how we're going to do it. I'll be the narrator.
It's mega long if people don't know, so we just get through it,
TLDR, hashtag fit out is not just flat, but a sign that one has not understood his role, his work, and integrity. Now for some history. Where did we come from?
It's the idea that you would dare to invoke integrity if you were Astralis. Like, these really are the most shameless cunts of all time. And it's so
Keep in mind as well.
They've just, if people aren't aware, I mean, I guess technically at the time of this, I don't know if they had actually signed Farlig. So let's be real. They're about to sign Farlig here.
No, this is in the post announcing Farlig.
So think about the context. You've just essentially completely, in a disposable fashion, pissed away the early career of Lockie, and you're now going to put him in prison to essentially just be brought out to pretend to use him at the major in the RMR, but then immediately bench him and explicitly not allow him to play professional Counterstrike. But you're now going to lecture us on integrity. All right, cool. Well, go ahead then, sir. You have the floor. Fucking hell.
Yeah. So where did we come from? From the summer of 2016, when I became daily involved and no longer just an investor in Astralis, all focus has been on the following. A, the player's well-being and development.
What was that stat you had where they, played like that many days?
It was in 45 days. It was something like in 45 days they played in like 5 tournaments in 4 continents. It was something like 70 maps or whatever because they made it to the finals and all.
We did win most of them and make the finals. And can we have a break? Fuck off! You need to practice more. Like, they're so outrageous. These guys are so outrageous.
Oh, I know. And by the way, the fans, the guys who reply to these comments are like, "Love you, legend."
I'll be simping.
Love you, legend. Thanks for the transparency.
I know. Simping for Nicola Nyholm of all the fucking people.
Mad, isn't it? Anyway, yes, the players should be able to perform at the highest level in a tightly packed tournament calendar. B, to create income, not least for the sake of being able to pay the highest salaries with contracts under safe Danish conditions, which oblige the employer in another way than just contractor agreements that other esports orgs use even today, where the player can just basically be thrown out. No history of just throwing out players at Astralis. lifting esports from subculture to mainstream recognition, also for the sake of activating non-endemic sponsors to fulfill point B. In the summer of 2016, Astralis
technically, point C is sort of true because that essentially is his entire plan with the team.
Yes, yeah.
So he's actually the last one he's actually nailed. That was his whole plan, of course, to sell it when it's fucking huge. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. In the summer of 2016, Astralis was falling apart from a dynamic that was symptomatic of many teams at the time. You're going to love this. Read between the lines. One player would move on, another would bench the first, a third was about to walk the dogs. I'm guessing that's like an idiom meaning he's going to fuck off. The coach did not have real authority and was subject to the whims of the players. Contractually, the players put the team above themselves, and agreements were not complied with as there were no consequences for non-compliance. So he's saying, obviously, that's like how esports was as a whole. We were at that time just 4 people besides the team and Danny. My co-founder of Refresh and co-founder of Astralis, Jakob Lund Christensen. That's the guy who used to run Copenhagen Wolves. Team manager and co-founder of Astralis, Freddie Biskov. Saw me, employee PHE DeMark, and the undersigned Jacob, Frederick, and Philip all had long experience with esports, but were green in business. I was green on sports and talent management, but it was clear Astralis lacked the basic structure that makes many organizations effective. Right, we're about to go on to his next point. Anything to add to that, Dunk?
I mean, here's the funny thing. On the part where he diagnoses the problem in the Astralis team before he sort of takes a non-investor role, he's actually accurate about most of that stuff. That is, to be fair, part of the problem to work. Like, obviously players ran.
We're literally talking about that now with Fnatic, right?
Perfect example. You would have a scenario. Basically, that's what Crim's essentially we're implying is about to do. He's turning around to you and going, "We got to kick this guy," but then he's going, "Actually, I think I'm off." So he's basically making plans. He isn't going to be part. Yeah, of course. There was people essentially. You could boil it down to players just got to be God and play God with your team and your money. That part's accurate. I'd give him credit on that one. He's not wrong. It's just I imagine what he then claims to have done and the things he will apply now.
Oh yeah.
Fucking Bobkiss, won't it? It'd be nonsense, but we'll see. I mean, say though, this is also why I hate the lack of transparency in all this fucking shit as well. Even though I will say in Denmark, at least all the owners and the shit is listed unless you own a tiny infinitesimal amount. Like you notice when Astralis the org was made and everyone kept hitting so hard that line, play your own dog, play your own dog. You notice no one told us back then that the Copenhagen Wolves guy was in from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like they officially announced, he joined the company like a couple of years ago. So like, I don't remember that this was being publicized that he was in from day one though, because that in itself causes questions, right? Like, so wait a minute, was that while you still own the Copenhagen Wolves and then selling like players to your rivals north? Like what? What's going on there? You know what I mean? I would have those questions, but as usual, no one. Why would I care about a conflict of interest story? Like that will be the fucking thing someone will say to me as I'm just dying on a fucking coma. Yeah, but why would he do a conflict of interest? I can't, please, no. I have to exit this reality and go to another one where people know what conflict of interest is.
So he then says, the first new initiatives in the results are now he's implementing changes. The first thing we did was give Danny real authority to make it clear to the players and the outside world. I think we even gave him the role of sports director. All the players' focus should be on the server, other training, or having time off. Now, I think this is kind of interesting because the one point I would absolutely say, if you were ever going to make like an anime about a CSGO team and how the power of friendship can sort of overcome adversity, it would be Astralis. Once Glaive gets there, they're all on the same page. They're all pals. They're all very close. Freddie, their manager, remember they had the whole TSM thing where they were like, no, we will pay to have out of our own pockets to keep Freddie around because he does so much for us. And I don't ever think, there's a weird intimation here that like those players would have like disrespected Zonic in some way or not listened to him if they hadn't given him this authority. I don't think that was going on in Astralis, frankly. I was in that team's orbit for a while, and I never saw anything that ever suggested that those guys were like adverse to any of the management or not all pulling in the same direction or backstabbing each other. They seem to be one of the most, at that time in particular, one of the most like together teams. Their problem initially was they couldn't get over the hump to win the big ones. And once they cracked that nut, they became the best core of all time. So weird, but anyway. In order to establish further structure and solve other problems that were and will continuously arise, the next thing we did was to hire a sports psychologist. I found the candidates I could in Copenhagen, but how did I know if they were good when I had never worked with them on this subject before? The solution was to ask Mia Stelberg, one of my wife's best friends, and sports psychologist for, among others, Finland's national ice hockey team, for help in finding the right one. Danny, Mia, and I interviewed 8 candidates in my parents' living room. I don't know why.
I know why these details. The flavor text is so silly.
I know. Because we did not have an office yet. Despite my own clear rule of not hiring friends or family and the obvious disadvantage of her residence in Helsinki, Danny and I did not have to exchange many glances to agree that Mia was the most qualified. It was the starting shot for the pioneering work Mia did with us and the team for the next 1.5 years. It also had the consequence that Finn/Carrigan, who I like a lot personally and professionally, was put on the bench after not keeping appointments. Finally, Mia was the last pinhole before Glave's deal was signed as a new player on the team. So I don't know why Carrigan's got to catch a fucking stray here, like in this story, like essentially pointing out this new piece of information that hadn't been put out there, that like he wouldn't have appointments with a sports psychologist, and that's why we benched him, essentially. I mean, surely it's optional, right?
I would say so, yeah. Because here's the problem. I don't know. Like, put it this way. Like, it has to be optional, Richard, because logically, when you signed your contract and agreed to join the team, there was no mention of any of this. Like, and do you agree that you will go to regular? Like, essentially, that's something they've later. I would say it's optional. Like, in my opinion, the org has to ask you permission for that. Like, I think you would be within your rights as a player if you said, like I'll give you an example. You remember back in the day when the Astralis team first got this sports psychologist? Famously, Olaf Meister had that gangster comment where he said, like, thing is, we don't need it because we don't choke. Like, if you actually were that good though, and you didn't have any problems with your game, I don't necessarily hate the idea. You say, well, I don't see the value in it. Like, I agree with you. Why does that need to be outed? I'd also throw this in as well. Why is that being outed? Private information within the company of something that someone chose to do, not in a public-facing manner whatsoever.
Not very professional, is it?
Yeah, why is he getting thrown under the bus now, years after the fact?
Yeah. I mean, like, for me, it's like, also as well, you have to think about who Carrigan is. He's like an older guy. He's like, you know, like, my expectation would be, because if I was running an org, I probably would have a sports psychologist involved, right? But my expectation would be this. I would say to people, like, give it a try, and if it doesn't work for you, fine. If you agree that it doesn't work for you, fine. But also understand, if you're not taking full advantage of all the tools at your disposal and you underperform, it's not going to, you can't walk it back.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I mean, that's reasonable, right?
Exactly.
And also, I think it goes without saying, like, all of that shit has to stay private. I mean, it's ironic that Nyholm's out here fucking talking out of school when none of his players can do that. They're all signed to a contract where they specifically can't.
Remember how they were the fuckers where, because of the burnout, they were going outrageous, again, subtweeting us about the idea, like, you know, people would take light of that or whatever. Like, why are you talking about essentially what someone's, like, the fact that someone didn't want to work with a sports? Like, again, to me, that's private info. You don't need to put that out there. There's no... Yeah. And again, if I had to speculate why he's done it, Richard, he's doing it so that he gets to sound like a gangster, like, and I even benched Carrigan, basically, like, fucking Carrigan, bro. And by the way, I've no doubt the other reason he's also doing that now is because Carrigan's still a famous, prominent player, and he gets to sound like, because remember, his premise before was that, you know, players ran the org, so now he's trying to show us that, like, no, I came in, and then we're like, Carrigan, you sit down there, Zonic's in charge, you go to your set, like, he's making himself sound like it's all fucking him.
It's classic narcissistic Nyholm. I fixed it all, you know. Of course. He then goes on, we're about to get to it.
Because here's the problem I had with it. I might just be off. This could obviously be triggering me, but it reminds me, you might remember this, you'll be the only person who does, of when Red Eye, on the episode after I was fired from Katowice, he went on Unfiltered, right? And he did a whole speech at the beginning, which reminded me of this. Is why it triggers me a little bit. Because even though, on one hand, he was being honest, he purposely phrased it like, I just had to fire the best guy in the world. But that almost sounded like you were making it like a humble brag, that you're so epic, you can fire the best. You know what I mean? It didn't sound as much like, oh, it sucks, didn't it? It almost felt like, what the fuck, why are you saying that as well? Something like fucking to be proud of. I get the vibe, that's the vibe I get when he says this, unfortunately. I don't see it as just an aside that he threw it in there, you know.
So, yeah, it's just a bit weird. It just doesn't need to be there. It doesn't strengthen your point at all. Then he goes, the untapped potential of the team was opened up and the results speak for themselves. We had managed the first and easiest part of the task to get the team to number 1 in the world. But the long, cool move to keep them... Easiest part. To keep them in first place was still ahead of us. This is where Casper shit comes into the picture. Casper was introduced to us by Geordie Roig, the first external employee in Refresh who came to us from Nordisk Film, and before that had been both BIF and the handball club AG Copenhagen. What seems a bit absurd, but which is due to a personal disapproval of handball due to a primary school gymnastics.
I can't already. This is already getting mad.
It's partridge, mate. This is like the Danish partridge. Due to an incident at primary school. Right. But which is due to a personal disapproval of handball due to a primary school gymnastics teacher named Ulrich Wilbeck and a classmate named Klaus Brun Jorgensen. I had no idea who Casper was. Like, why do you fucking add that something bad happened related to you in school, related to handball?
Because he makes it sound. Because
he's the teacher.
Here's the problem, Richard. He's trying to make it seem like Casper Hid's like a household name, like he's like fucking Conor McGregor. So he's having to explain why he didn't know who he was. So instead of just being like, "Well, I don't follow handball, do I?" Because who does? Instead, he's had to go. As a boy, I never really took to handball due to the behavior. What are you talking about? Why are you citing your relationship with your? Literally, he says it's primary school. Primary school.
It really is. It really is.
I just put off handball forever after his behavior. I can't handle it. Like, give me a break.
It really is like that Alan Partridge bit where he bumps into his old teacher, and he goes. Yeah, it's great to see you. There's some teachers I wouldn't want to meet. There was that one who used to smell really bad. Kaki Raphael, we used to call him. Kaki Raphael. And the guy goes, "Yeah, I am Mr. Raphael." Look, bloody hell, how are you doing? Why have you added this mad backstory about your school to just explain I don't know who Casper is? Like, mental. Anyway.
The problem is, I do get also the vibe from Nicola Nyholm that he is on that like Mark Zuckerberg shit where it's like, I must try and pretend I'm actually like a human with like a family and desires and love. It feels hard, doesn't it? It's like, why are you stressing that you're just a human? And it's like, well, we get it. Okay, we get it.
But what immediately impressed me was how he could talk everything from theory about team composition of different mental profiles to the practicality of physical training to keep mental sharpness or detailed layout of the player bus for optimal rest and preparation. It was my impression, by the way, all of that from handball.
I know.
It was my impression that Casper would really rather have worked as a sports director in the Handball Association, but we persuaded him to join after his active career stopped in the summer of 2017. He had no idea about esports, which for me was a core prerequisite.
Why? Why has he said it like that in such a stupid fashion, though? Like, if he just sort of caveated it with, I'm trying something innovative, I don't want to try the same thing. If you're doing that, you got to way out. He's made it sound like, and he was a bloody idiot, which was my most important point. What are you talking about?
He knew absolutely nothing about the role I would employ him in, which for me was essential. Like, what are you...
No, this is like some Coen Brothers shit, like, hire that man immediately. Like, what are you talking about? Like...
Yeah. Fucking hood sucker proxy.
So what are your qualifications for the role of director of esports? I know nothing about esports, and I play a sport that handball. Well, handball aside, because I did have an embarrassing incident with nothing is actually a positive at Astralis. Like, what are you talking about? And even that part, it's the way he just throws in stuff as an aside, like, and even his understanding of where to optimally place people on the bus. Like, what on earth are you talking about? What bus does it, like, can I just take a sidebar there? What bus does Astralis A have? Why are they using buses? Remember, they're not in the Premier League. No one's travelling to the game on a bus. So the only buses are shuttles. So I don't even know why the bus part's in there. But then secondly, go on then. I tell you what, entertain me, Nicola Nyholm. How did he transform the layout of your bus to be optimal for relax? What are you talking about? It's a bus. You just sit on it. That's it. Or does he go, right, you're on the back of the bus? What are you talking about? This is even that part, even a throwaway, pointless detail, it's just nonsense the more you think about it. It's maddening how stupid the detail is. Like, what is it?
Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous.
And that's what impressed this motherfucker. Is part of it was the boss. It's the idea. He goes, right, well, I don't know nothing about esports, but I tell you what, I've got some ideas about this boss that we're going to be using. I like to imagine them just going like, Casper, they don't actually travel on a bus. Nicola Nyholm going, shh, he doesn't know. I want to hear what he says. Like, what are you talking about? What boss? What is the boss? What are you talking about?
But like, get this right. He said, so he had no idea about esports, which for me was a core prerequisite for challenging all the problems as obvious as you would find in a sport invented behind the closed door to the boys' room. Without adult coaches to set a common framework, to structure a healthy everyday life, and to tell the players that if you do not show up for training on Thursday, you are on the bench for the match on Sunday. Without a deep understanding of the link between physical and mental endurance, with a dynamic where the individual player after a bad match had to wonder if the teammates were now on TeamSpeak to scold him and discuss whether or not to kick him, and so on. How would Casper help with any of that?
Oh, he wouldn't, I know. This is the problem though, Richard. Have you noticed how, like, that's another section where if you didn't tell me Nihon said it right, and you just said this is someone who's in the scene diagnosing some of the problems in teams, I would agree again. He's actually diagnosed. Yeah, there are real issues in that sense. There are problems with, like,
it's the solutions that are mental.
That's the point. He correctly identifies the problem, but then he applies a whack solution and then pretends he solved he cured cancer or some shit, didn't he?
Yeah. Anyway, it goes on. Change, improvement, and aggravated situations.
It's going to be my favourite section. I can already.
Oh, you will enjoy this. Casper and the team changed hundreds of parameters. From the big ones around basic training, so there were fewer hours spent on the server, and a prioritization of tournaments. And no, it happened a long time before Blast. Focus on physical and mental well-being. That was obviously an allusion to when we were calling them Astralis, where, by the way, they did prioritize Blast tournaments and also famously put the players in that ridiculous situation of having to say, yeah, but when we fly east, the jet lag's worse. So, or whatever the fuck it was. Anyway,
like that,
focus on physical and mental well-being. To the small ones, like when training took place, we moved it to daytime so players could keep their evenings free. A separate hotel room for Danny's planning. A discipline around meeting times and always going in unison at a LAN. It undoubtedly gave an advantage that Lucas and Nikolai could both contribute actively from having both been elite athletes in football and badminton, respectively.
It means Clave and Device there.
Yeah, Lucas and Nikolai, which incidentally shoots an arrow through the statement that stress should be reserved for sports athletes who do not know what it takes to function at an elite level. Casper created a strong culture and team spirit, and Astralis was not only intimidating on the server, but also outside, earning the respect of other teams, tournament organisers, and ultimately sponsors. It was a time of upheaval, and like everywhere else, where one fundamentally changes the culture and conditions, we also experience disagreements and tense situations, just like I reported in a report that was disputed by both Nickel Nyholm and Casper Shit at the time. Casper Shit even went on an interview on some Danish site, probably TV2.tk, given that relationship, where they were saying, it's all fabricated. We challenge it, but we've just got bigger fish to fry, essentially. Although Casper rightly places high demands on his players, the disagreements were not about sporting, but were about contracts and decision-making authority. Well.
Ooh, contract dispute, eh?
Mad. How odd.
Almost like that CSPPA story was true from 2 years ago, Rich.
I know, a bit weird, isn't it? Because I thought everything was just rosy in the org at that time. But here we are, between the lines. I think we can say.
By the way,
when he says decision-making authority as well, that obviously is a direct, that's a direct pushback against how much authority Casper had. He had too much.
Of course, yeah. I'll even say as well, the other thing that really does, actually really leaves a sour taste in my mouth about this whole thing is, as we're saying about how he, identifies real problems and doesn't provide the real solution. I also despise the way this whole thing is written, as though, if you didn't know anything about esports and you read this, you would assume Casper Fid must be the best coach ever to not burn players out mentally. Instead, he is by definition the worst to ever be in our game, because unfortunately his team was so good they played the maximum amount of maps you could pretty much play in each tournament, and he basically, in that scenario, that's where, by the way, you would have found out if he was a master of managing stress and burnout, and that. It wasn't. He essentially just worked them to the bone, then asked them to work more, and they mutinied. You would never get any of that from this, by the way. You would literally think from this that was some bad old org who did all that, and then Astralis came in and fixed that scenario. The premise is, it's after all the shit Nickel and I am saying now that this all happens. It just burns them to a crisp, and people are literally considering just leaving the team, retiring, all sorts of crazy shit that could have happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Oh, it's wild. Just mental. And to sort of just casually acknowledge it, when, by the way, you are actively putting out sort of disinformation to the fans at that time and disputing reporting that was trying to tell the fans what was going on. Some disagreements were real, he says. while others were a remnant of the time when players controlled everything. I don't get what that means. Maybe that's a mistranslation thing. The real ones were shares of commercial agreements, etc., while the remnants included contracts with synchronized expiration dates, which of course gave the players the best starting point in renegotiation. So in other words, he's just actively saying there, we renegotiated contracts individually to stop players having collective bargaining power. Like, just openly saying that. Then he goes on, however, until I go to the grave, I will maintain that for 99...
if people don't get it, by the way, that's what's so weird about the way he phrased that, because he essentially admitted the players were acting in their own interest, trying to get into a good position.
We put a stop to that.
Yeah, so of course we crushed that. But I will now write this in corporate speak, where if you're a naive fan, maybe you don't get what I'm saying.
Yeah, mad, isn't it, right? Then he goes, however, until I go to the grave, I will maintain that for 99%, it was mostly about the player's agent, the player association, meaning the CSPPA, who without hesitation tried to use Astralis' dominance as a platform to enter the market, both as a union and as an agent, to tax players, teams, and tournament organisers.
Nicola and Iom in the last two words there is on... Believe it or not, it's me and Nicola and Iom against ESL. How is this the fucking bedfellows? I mean, if people don't get it, he's essentially co-signed our opinion. That's what CSPPA does. It's a tax on TOs. And in this case, he's right, by the way. They would have done that to Team Orgs as well if they could have had them in their crosshairs too. You would have then been at their mercy. So that part, by the way, I'm even on Nicola and Iom's side. He's accurate. That's accurate what he just said.
Yeah, but this is where it gets in. This is where it gets like really difficult, right? Because I read this out on stream, and obviously when it first happened, and the general consensus there was, like, oh, this is this is the only good thing Astralis have done. I don't really know where I stand on the whole issue, because I kind of find it very hard to believe that the framing is this was all CSPPA fucking us over, when in reality, Zipnix was one of the fucking 3 big names over there, and he was on your team at the time. So that says to me that more likely the players were using the CSPPA to try and leverage a better deal. Now, the point still stands that essentially what the CSPPA has become, no matter what people want to say about good intentions, no matter how accurately people want to describe the need for what a player union is, it's become, and you will notice, by the way, just barely speaks at all about anything now, and all the original people have left, because it was clearly meant to be a money-making scheme of some sort.
Yeah.
And generally, the mechanism through which it will make money was through these shakedowns. We will not endorse you, and we will encourage our members not to come to your tournaments unless you pay us for that rubber stamp of approval. That was their model, right? And on top of that, everyone just seems to have forgotten the shady shit they were doing, where they were using competitor intelligence, essentially, that they would get from their role as a union to then feed that to agents that they were also running on the side. So they were negotiating player contracts and shit, and also dictating which players went to which orgs, famously with the whole FPX situation, I believe. So madness, that's not what a union is or does. So yes, I would certainly agree with Nicola and Iom that there were huge flaws with the CSPPA. The one characterization I probably disagree with is the idea that these were just some sort of manufactured fake disagreements that external parties created, like it was agents and the CSPPA putting their fucking fingers in the gumbo, when in reality you had disgruntled players because of the conditions at your org. That's all it boils down to.
Yeah, he makes it sound like the CSPPA just externally meddled for no reason in Astralis. Whereas even though he did say the player's agent, that needs to be stressed more. Like, your own players thought there were these problems and went to different people to strong arm you into do what they wanted. So that doesn't suggest, by the way, that you squashed all these issues and that you have a great relationship. No, it doesn't. It's just the opposite. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah, the Players Association, the Players Association's dealer lives in and for conflict, and took the inexperienced players and the more experienced Astralis org hostage. If you look at Astralis' major form dips, autumn 2018 and spring 2020, they fit in, funnily enough, with escalating contractual conflicts. In fact, the team played the Boston Major without even having the contract signed.
I can't even believe he is the person writing that and then going, send. By the way, If there's ever, do these orgs not even know what the concept of PR is, Richard? This is the area, by the way, where I do think esports people are incredibly amateurish.
Oh, PR for sure.
A giant company that wants to be valued at like millions and millions. Nobody would do this. Yeah, the PR person would be all over this. Like, mate, the idea you press send on that is so mental. The fans just get it. Think about that. So he was willing to have his players potentially win the world championship while only fake representing his org. What the fuck is this guy talking about?
Yeah, mate, absolutely insane.
That under your hat, mate. That's one of those things you never want to come out.
But also, he say like, mate, why do contract negotiations have to be difficult? Like the framing of that is that they have to be difficult, that we have to fight. You know, this was a legendary group of players that had done everything right for the org and clearly put up with stuff that they didn't enjoy or didn't like.
Yeah.
And they put up with all the wacky batshit nonsense that Casper Fit wanted them to do. And even represented your brand at a tournament, not even under contract, due to the ongoing negotiation.
Famously never said anything publicly during these years as well.
Absolutely.
Never spoke against the org, ever.
In fact, even those that re-signed with the org, they've never come out and publicly said we had real problems.
They've low-key been some of the
first we're hearing about it is from fucking Nicola Naum himself. Yes. And here's the thing. I think if fans think about this, why would the contracts have to be a battle? Now, look, I know Zipnik's wanted the fucking bag, and in the end, they've caved in and essentially given him the bag. Maybe you don't think he's worth that. But here's the thing. Contracts are a negotiation. It's not a given that the players go, we will accept your terms because we're just happy to be here. Go bleeding blimey governor. And P.S. make the working conditions worse and worse.
Isn't there some old saying that goes like a good negotiation is one where both parties like don't get or they feel like
unsatisfied.
Up, you know? It's like in this guy's world, he thinks that like essentially if you ever want anything beyond what he offers, that you're being difficult or some fucked up angle. By the way, spoiler, that's actually kind of a toxic relationship to have with your fucking boss, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
That's a bit fucked up.
Yeah, mad that he's the one saying it. Anyway, this is the last major chunk. Obviously, I told you guys it was a fucking epic, and you'll really enjoy this one because it's called "The Noise from Outside," aka Richard Lewis and Thorin. One of the stories that's been running for a long time is based on our own announcement of a general pay cut in the organisation at the start of the pandemic, where we wanted to secure all employees' jobs. I love
this, because if people don't know, I have this all squared. I know it all, so come on.
Yeah, and instead of cutting back, we chose a solitary and voluntary pay cut, up to 30% for the highest paid. Several players on our various teams were involved, but no one was forced. And although we generally do not comment on individual personal terms, and tell Carrigan that now. And among other things, therefore did not initiate an assertion against assertion war in the media at the time. I can here well reveal that none of the Counterstrike players went down in salary because the Players Association saw it as an opportunity to initiate negotiations on completely different things. This was done, meaning the pay cut, by the management and all administrative staff with a salary above a certain amount, with the largest percentage decrease among those who earned the most. That way, everyone in the office stood together to secure everyone's jobs in an uncertain time, and we were and are proud of that. That the story in a large-scale article, mine, has been angled that someone, players or others, were forced into a pay cut is reprehensible. That was far from the only erroneous claim in the article, but it is not my mission to comment more specifically on it. I bet you won't, you cunt. So, here's what I'll say. It's a semantic game that you're playing there, because what do you mean by forced? If you say to players, we really need you to take this pay cut, and if you don't, the future of the org might not be sustainable and you might not have a job, I'm saying you're essentially forcing them. It's coercion.
Yes, exactly. Coercion is a better term because people understand it as coercion. That isn't like he didn't. Yes, Nicola Naum, you didn't put an AK-47 to their head and say "sign now or I kill you." Yeah, but essentially you did all the other soft versions of that, didn't you? Like if people don't know, the reason why I've got this cunt banged to rights is because not only do none of the League of Legends players play for this motherfucker's team anymore, but I was deep with the League of Legends players as well. And guess what? Unlike the CSGO guys, because they weren't renegotiating contracts, they were way more forthcoming. And can tell you, this is the story of what happened to the League of Legends players who at the time it was Origin they were called in that brand. Not you notice he doesn't mention that at all in this whole story.
It doesn't mention that we bought a fucking brand that was utterly worthless, fucking used it, and then basically just got rid of it. Yeah. None of the failures. Basically,
in the League of Legends team, some of the players had already accepted lower offers to join the team, specifically to play with certain other players, right? So they weren't even in the situation the CSGO players were. The CSGO players were some of the highest paid players in the game and were all massively successful, blah, 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 all the rest of it, right? These are players that have already taken a pay cut to join your org. You're basically benefiting from them, saying, I'll actually play for less than I'm worth just to play with that guy. Not you, that guy there, just in a seat. And you then go to those players as well and listen to how they offered them this pay cut, right? I was told that they got them all into like a call or something. And this is right before they were going to play like a playoff match, Richard. And they just said to these players, like, basically, if some of you don't take a pay cut, I'm going to have to fire. And they started naming people who like work in the office in Astralis, like, she's gone, he's gone. And they were doing it, by the way. Think about what I'm framing here. They were trying to like emotionally coerce you to sort of feel like, would you want him to have not have a job? That was what was implied. And I'll have to say, some of the players, as far as I know, didn't take the pay cuts. So some of them even pushed back and got lawyers involved and everything. But like, think about what this guy tried to do. And then also, by the way, think about the way he framed it there about his players, where he sort of made it sound, Richard, like this. Like, we needed to do the pay cut. It was the only thing that was going to save us. We all stood together. And then he sort of just like frames it as that. But no players did do it. But he makes it sound like, which is fine, which is like, no, that part doesn't even have like an internal logic to it, dude. If anything, if what he's saying is true, by the way, and the org really could have tanked, this should actually be you sort of like calling out the players that they said no, like, think how selfish they are, right? They wouldn't even save the org. So I find this whole part so murky.
I mean, to basically, put it out there, essentially, like, yes, these things went on. Yes, pay cuts happened. Yes, the CS players didn't do it, but they only didn't do it because the CSPPA got involved. Like, the optics around everything you're saying are terrible.
Also didn't want to do it in CSGO. I can tell you that right now.
No, of course they fucking didn't.
Yes.
Of course they fucking didn't. You have to understand, by the way, this is at a time when that core still had, like, we're thinking of them with a couple of wash players now, probably.
Oh, no, they were still mega then, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They still had value. They could still sort of dictate the terms. The fact that they even having to get a player union involved kind of like twist your fucking arm up the back, right? Meanwhile, like you say, I heard similar stories from the league side of things, where it's like, literally, think about that. Saying to players like, listen, you will be okay, probably, maybe, but everyone in the office isn't, and then if that sets off a domino effect and the org goes under, congrats, you killed the org. Like, it's
outrageous, isn't it? That's the ultimate guilt trip. That is the ultimate guilt trip. And also, I'll throw this detail in there. So here's another thing that at the same timeline was going on while Nicola Nyholm talks about this. So you notice he's talking now about, essentially, he's putting the players on blast that they didn't try to save the company because we're all in it together. And even essentially he's implying like me and all the other big wigs took a fucking pay cut. Right? Yeah. Here's what you don't mention though, Nicola Nyholm. At the same exact time, I'm told by your players, they had a clause in their contract that stated somehow they had to be like informed if you were like in negotiations to sell them or we're going to, and I've told you didn't inform them and you were trying to sell pieces of the entire squad to another organization at the exact time that they're now trying to like get all this stuff done. You kind of get pay cuts and renegotiations. That's a bit weird for someone who, we're all in it together. It's all about like, what about him and we're all taking pay cuts. Weirdo, you're just trying to sell the entire team for millions and not giving it. And basically the premise would be if the other side had said yes, you'd have just walked in in the players room this time for CSGO instead of League and gone, by the way, guys, you're all out, pack it up, you're all getting shipped out tomorrow. Like that can't it. You notice how they always do this. You know this better than anyone. In esports, this is the way it works, guys. When a company wants to fuck you, they go on they play the emotional, personal angle, and they go, "But I've known you for so many years.
We're a family."
Yeah, and then what they do is when they want to fuck you, they go, it's business, mate. What do you stop getting so emotional and making it personal? This is a business decision. You've got to be a professional. So the premise is they just get the edge every time because they play people like that. And sadly, it works often. I'm actually, in this sense, by the way, props to the Astralis players for not fucking caving to that. Because imagine the precedent that would set in your org.
Oh yeah, totally. Just outrageous admission.
It is. It's mega, isn't it?
And again, sort of call out the reporting. Look, listen, if my article's inaccurate, like, surely you have to address point by point somewhere.
Yeah.
You can't just keep saying it's inaccurate. Also, how's Duncan heard the same thing from separate sources? It's like
exactly.
It doesn't wash. It doesn't chime. What you're essentially saying is everybody who said it was a liar. The only people who can be trusted are you on this particular topic. Well, no, I'm not fucking with that at all.
And here's how
you're a known liar.
It's also not the case that he's someone who's adverse to calling people out. Remember when he famously called me out on Twitter because I'd said, wasn't it when I'd made the comment about like that Astralis was supposed to be signed with Flashpoint or whatever? I think it was after that comment. He basically came out and openly called me a liar for something. I can't remember what the context was.
But that was his quote, wasn't it? Like mentally unstable with nominally good ideas or something.
I actually had it as my bio for a little while. Yeah. Straight fire line, by the way. It's even on my website. I've actually got it. It says, on that quotes part.
Yeah.
As Nicola and Ihom, like, order of Astralis, whatever. Like, of course.
Yeah, wild. Anyway, he continues. Of course, we've had sporting initiatives where we did not have full agreements with the players. All initiatives have been reversed with coaches and or players. Some were swept off the table, some were adjusted, and some were introduced. If you ask the players today, now that they're contractually obliged, despite uncertainty at the beginning, they will say that they can see why we did what we did and that it has actually both worked and been introduced elsewhere today. The most obvious is the extended roster.
Oh my God, this guy's beyond shameless.
Which should address several competitive weaknesses we had, not least the dependence on individual players in case of illness, on declining sporting performance, or on contractual status. By the way, I love that because you have just essentially admitted what we've known for ages. The players you brought in were scabs.
Yes.
And
also, think about this angle he's taking here about how, we didn't want to have to depend on individual players. So what we did is just bring in stand-ins who weren't as good and then perform much worse. You are aware, Nicola, like, he couldn't have been at this time. It's technically before it happened. Like, FaZe did just fuck around with a stand-in and win, like, the biggest event in the world right now. Like, but, I guess you played in a fucking Blast Showdown and failed it. So that proves that you don't need, I think it was Glaive and fucking Zipnix at the time, right?
That's for him. It was capped over 200 times for the Danish handball team, Dunk, and he's going to sort it out.
There you go.
Then he goes on to say individual players' contracts.
Also, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and say the players wouldn't say that all those things were justified. Hence why the players had massive contract disputes with you repeatedly and even used the CSPPA in your own statement twice to attack you. And then after that, 3 of them left the fucking team, you idiot. Like, think it through. No, they wouldn't say that. And also, the point you just made there is a point I'll never be able to get over. And I know to other people it's such a petty point, but it really triggers me, Richard, which is if it is indeed true that in the Astralis contracts, there is not just the standard can't sort of like disparage the company. Because normally what that really means, by the way, is you can't say like some outrageous shit on Twitter. You will obviously get in massive trouble and they potentially sue you, right? But that normally doesn't mean you can't just like mildly criticize. As far as I can tell in Astralis is, they've really gone to the nines and essentially you can't like really be critical of almost anything. They can sort of interpret anything. How that is not only just skipped over by people, but never brought up in interviews. Like, as an interviewer, by the way, I wouldn't in good faith be able to interview an Astralis player without at some point asking him about that question in the interview, because how would the rest of it be valid? If I know he cannot criticize us, if people don't know, the reason we know this is a situation that they would exploit is they did this with Device. They trotted Device out right after Richard's article, and it wasn't, here's the thing, he didn't even go out of his way to say Richard was wrong. He just sort of didn't address the bad things. And in doing so, it implied to me that is inaccurate. That seemed like the behavior of someone who knew. I just can't sort of go near it. I have to just leave those topics because the org won't let me, basically. So this is a very disingenuous statement because essentially, if the players did disagree, they aren't allowed to say. They are not allowed to say it. And then you're just going like, if I'm lying, God strike me down. You're like doing that on the fucking playground.
I know.
There you go. The answer's in from the big man. Like, give me a break.
I know. So, but you like this bit because he actually admits that the 10-man roster thing was a complete disaster, shambles.
These guys is the way that this is their problem. Actually, if I had to, in short, describe why me and Richard beat these guys, because we have a working fucking memory. They can't even keep track of their own lies, can they? It's like they admit to the wrong things in the wrong order. It's like you're the ones who said that wasn't the case. You're all like, give me a break.
So he says here. What we hadn't assessed was that when we expanded the roster, it reintroduced all dynamics for individual players, thinking they could risk losing their starting place, thereby began to act politically.
You just said you didn't want a dependence on individual players. You won't believe it. Now these bloody individual players, we're totally dependent on them. They're using all the political influence. Shut up, you
Although
idiot.
I still believe in the good of an extended roster, we failed managerially in the execution.
Ooh, okay.
We eventually switched horses to the academy system. Now, obviously, he's never going to admit to failing.
He's not going to now use one of the worst academy teams ever to basically claim now that he also invented the
It's even better than that. It's even better than that. Right? He says, we eventually switched horses to the academy system where we, together with Na'Vi, were the two driving forces behind the design and establishment of the Academy League, which now runs under the name We Play Academy League. So,
don't you have a video, Richard, about how Nicola Nihon wanted to, wasn't it like it creates his own universe or something? It was like about how he wanted to create his own league and teams and academy. You did a whole video on this topic years before the fact.
I know. But also, I mean, just the idea he's going to take credit for We Play as well.
It's mad, isn't it?
You know. Me and Na'Vi did it. You also know it's very politically expedient to name Na'Vi because they're the biggest org in the collective that plays in that league. And so by extension, it's us and Na'Vi. We're as big as Na'Vi. Absolutely not true in any sort of context.
This last line though. Fuck you actual cunt.
Fortunately, we've always been good at using the noise to create dynamism, momentum, and fighting spirit in the house. Smiley wink face.
Yeah, exactly. No, guys, he is such a boomer. He really did one of those. It's like he pulled it. I like to believe he typed this whole post on a late 1999 Nokia cell phone, and he's obviously gone with the boomer emoji. Like he hasn't done an emoji. He's done a fucking emoticon, hasn't he? He's done a little winky smile. Mate, no one's been sending those for about 15 years, mate. Why are you doing that still? Like,
it's all about beak face. Exactly. Where have you been?
Exactly.
So anyway, here's the final bit, and then we'll wrap it up and do viewer questions. The grand roast of Nicola Nihon will be coming to an end. It remains that from the start to the historically long dominance until today, I am eternally grateful to CSPPA, Mia, the players, and all the others who have played a role in building Astralis and promoting esports. It was not a damn easy sale in 2016 to get capable people like Mia and Casper and other crucial profiles on board. But they've all done an invaluable job that we and the next generation of players and fans can thank them for. Really struggling to think how this kind of lines up with where the org is today. Clearly failing in almost every esport they've touched and losing money and losing share price. But okay, you've nailed it, I guess. And I will forever continue to urge my colleagues in Astralis to experiment and fail, no matter how we are judged from the outside. It is our strength that we have never let ourselves be influenced and carried away by the harsh critics, but have always listened to constructive feedback, especially from
that out. He's wigged out so many fucking times. It's mental.
I know. He's never listened to constructive feedback. We
haven't overreacted to critics. They should just, as he's saying that, pull up on screen that tweet of him just wigging, going, and there's people in Flashpoint like he's mentally ill. I
know, right? Especially from the now unimaginably many fans who both back up and make demands, but in the end do it. I don't know. Again, that's probably a mistranslation. We believe in creating a team and an organization that will be at the top of esports in 1, 5, and 25 years.
That last line. Right. Listen, the scale was even good. 1, 5, 10. I'll give you that. The 25. You're going to be here in 25 years. Like, the joke is almost no one might be here in 25. Like, Na'Vi might not be here in 25 years. No one can know.
Yeah.
But he's just such a ridiculous human. Of course, in his world, it's going to last 1,000 years. That's
totally. I mean, obviously, the joke is he's not thinking about 25 years. No. It's just he's willing to hold on to it for 25 years if that's how long it takes to get it above all the money he's sunk in it, so he can flip it as an asset, which is all he cares about and all he's historically done in all of his venture capital enterprises. It is the only way we will learn and lift ourselves up and others. With a visionary and passionate organisation, with employees and players who are there for each other, one big family, you might say, Duncan, and with sporting and commercial leaders who can and will create change. GG to all of you. That's what they say in esports, isn't it?
So we can put take what he just said there. Remember that part he said where he goes, passionate organisation with employees and players who are there for each other. Like, let's just rewind a second. Boss, can I have some time off? I'm totally burned out. Fuck no. Get a doctor's note, bitch. Oh, help. I'm having problems with my negotiation. Well, better get an agent, hadn't you? Oh, I don't want to take a pay cut. Oh, how are these people with United? These are people who constantly are like, I'm not doing anything for you beyond what the law legally requires me to do for you. Fuck you. And then he makes it like, we're a big family. Oh, we all got to get. It's nothing like that, is it? It's the opposite. You're all cynical as fuck.
Yep. And then GG to all of you who have come so far as to the end of this incredible post. So, I mean, I think that's interesting because, he's essentially admitted to a number of things that were disputed in the past. Whether he even acknowledges that or not, whether he knows, whether he's cognizant.
I don't think he's aware. I think he's done that thing that people always do who are liars, which is because it's safe now to admit it. He doesn't realize they actually disputed it and sometimes said we were lying. What he's thinking is, well, what does it matter? What does it matter what Device thought 2 years ago? He's not in my team anymore. It's like, you idiot, you've actually just revealed what we always knew, which is that you were just fucking lying.
Yeah, just bonkers. So there you go. That was Nicola Naum's manifesto.
Mad delusional. Fucking hell, that was delusional as fuck.
And hopefully there's some information there for you guys that is relevant. Now we are going to plow through.
Casper Hid's actually just amazing. Turns out he did everything basically.
Yeah, did everything right. Nailed it.
Right. It's the way you're right as well. Richard wasn't exaggerating, by the way. Not only does every reply to the comment sort of be like, "Oh my god, thank you so much for telling us the truth," and just like accept it all. But no one even flames this fucker. You'd at least think there'd be someone like, "You lying piece of shit." Like, remember, you can say on Digital TV, like, give me break. You all swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. Yeah,
not to mention as well, it's literally in an article where essentially Lucky's been fucking fed to the lions, paraded around and made to say, I like being eaten by lions.
He's somehow gone into the fucking comment section of probably one of the worst pieces of PR to be announced by Astralis in years, when you just said last year that you were keeping this 5-man lineup. And then you've somehow turned it into a W. This is why I told you in a fucked up way. When I realised how stupid the average fan is, to be fair, this is effective. Like, it works. Look, you see, everyone's just buying it.
Yeah.
I can see why he does it.
Yeah. So, viewer questions. All the people that pay $50 or more on our Patreon get to ask us a question. It can be about anything. We didn't do them last time, so this is going to be a bumper edition. So let's get through them. Bitcoin Cash Podcast asks, what are the best unheard behind-the-scenes stories from 2010 and 2012 in StarCraft 2?
Oh, because it's for StarCraft. I wonder why he was picking that particular set of years. Oh, here's the thing, though. I think we could tell a couple of good ones here. Because the thing is, first of all, I feel like the statute of limitation on some of those stories definitely gone. Because half those people aren't in esports or the game's so irrelevant. Like, there's definitely some we could tell there. Let me think of one. Do you have a good one from StarCraft? You must have some good ones.
I mean, shit, man. Like, I don't even know which ones aren't told and which ones
that's
are.
The problem as well.
That's like the hard part. There was the time Artosis tried to fight me.
Oh, come on.
You know about that?
I've told this before, but good, tell it anyway.
Yeah, maybe.
Ages young told us.
Man, it's so vague now, but it was at one of the dream hacks where basically what had happened was it was when they were doing that fucking documentary, The Sons of StarCraft.
Yes.
And it was him and, Tasteless were going to be in it. And they got a mate that they knew from college to basically crowdfund. And this is when, obviously at the time, Kickstarters and crowdfunding was all still relatively new.
Shit, yeah.
And I was super against it, actually. I remember, which in retrospect was probably a very wrong and naive position to take. It just seemed to me to be rife for abuse at that time.
It was abused a lot, to be fair. A lot of those
I remember there used to be a guy called Chobo Peon, Patrick O'Howell.
He used to work for me once upon a time.
Yeah, and basically he tried to crowdfund his own website.
Yeah, that's right. To be a journalist, right? Yeah.
And basically the framing was he did a video saying, imagine how many untold stories there are in esports, but if you were to pay me to run my own website, I would have financial independence so I could tell you the truth. And I remember writing an article basically saying, what terrible optics for a journalist to come out and say, if you, the fans, pay me money so I'm not beholden to an editor, then and only then can you sort of like trust my word.
Yeah.
And we had a back and forth about that. In retrospect, I was on the wrong side of that argument. I did the same for the Root Gaming House as well. I wrote an article where it was like saying, if you crowdfund a gaming house in esports, what you're essentially announcing to the world is we are fucking clueless and inept and can't create a sustainable business model. And that got me absolutely despised as well. But in general, my attitude was sort of validated because obviously we had a number of fucking Kickstarters that were all just scams, Sons of StarCraft being one of them.
Made to this day, literally. I think there's at least one. I can't remember which one. One of those StarCraft 2 documentaries was just never made, Richard, ever.
Yeah, it's not Sons of StarCraft. I can't remember what the fuck it was
another
called.
One. I forget which one.
I've got an interview with that director. He was working on a building site at the time. because he was trying to get the money together to finish the documentary. And I'm like doing an interview with him on his phone. I think it was that one that never got made. But anyway, so Sons of StarCraft eventually did get finished, but it took their personal connection from their agent who represented them, who had basically done work with Kim Romer on Gamers, and when you were there, and they got on Gamers to fund and edit what he had, because it was an amateurish documentary. The footage, there was no white balance in a lot of it, so it was like really murky and weird. He didn't do sound balance, so some clips were super loud with background noise, and others were really quiet and not, and it was super hot.
It was also full of filler as well. It was all shit, like you could tell they were just like, fuck, we haven't got any footage for this month. Just do something in a fucking plane for 10 minutes or so. Yeah. It was terrible.
And basically, you know, it was their college mates who took your money if you funded this documentary, which, keep in mind, Testosis, that partnership is one of the greatest commentary duos of all time in any esport, in the whole of esports. And they were mad.
They were the highest paid casters in the world, I've no doubt, at the time. Yeah.
They were mad charismatic, and they had the world at their feet at that particular time. So there was a real demand to see a documentary telling their story.
It'd be epic if you made a really good one, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So anyway, me being me, of course, I'm the guy who says this is all bullshit. Where's the documentary? These were the promised dates according to his own fucking, Kickstarter. I went in, I fucking interviewed people who said, yeah, you're just spending the money and having a jolly up. And I kept writing these articles, and I basically said, the people you should be angry with in this instance isn't even the grifter. It's the fact that Tasteosis themselves came out and essentially shilled for the guy, saying he was a personal friend and definitely trustworthy, and he just hit a few logistical problems, and don't worry, keep giving the money, it'll be fun. So I called them out. So anyway, I went to some DreamHack event. It might have been the DreamHack Moscow I did where we were in Sweden.
You did it remotely?
Yeah, because that was 24. So this is sort of out of that era, I guess.
Oh, right, it'd have been after the Donbass thing then. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Could have been.
So this isn't really even answering the question. It's just re-flaring up some old esports beef. But basically, we were at an after party. I might also be wrong. I might be wrong about that. It might not be DreamHack Moscow. I could have been there in a different capacity entirely. Could have just been there as a journalist, which, I didn't work a lot of the early DreamHacks because people didn't feel I would be good enough on camera or whatever. So anyway, we're at this after party. I'm hanging out with everybody, because I fucking know everybody and like to have a beer. And fucking a drunk Artosis comes up to me, and man alive, he's fucking lit and he's fucking angry, dude. And he pulled me into a corner, and it's the most surreal attempt at initiating a fight I've ever seen, because he was poking me in the chest with his finger and saying, like, I hate the way you make a living. You tear people down. That's all you do. You're scum. He was giving me this, like,
these are fighting words if people don't know. These are fighting fucking words.
Whatever. I was just like, listen.
I will just say it. As soon as someone starts doing that on my...
Yeah, I know. Well, as we'd later find out, the fucking esports community won't allow... You have to just be beaten up, essentially. If the person's more popular than you, they just get to kick the shit out of you. That's it. That's how esports works, right? So he was poking me in the chest and calling me a scumbag and all of this stuff. And what kept happening was, as he was basically trying to goad me into a fight, or at least renounce my entire career as a journalist, people were coming up going, hey, Artosis, can I get a selfie? And so he was like mad angry, like screwed up face, calling me a cunt. And then he would turn around and go like, and put on these like mad manic smiles while motherfuckers took and like I'm probably in the background on some of them pictures, like just in the corner, like going, what the fuck's going on? Anyway, I just kept saying to him, like, going, look, mate, are you gonna fucking throw a punch or what? Like, because it's just fucking embarrassing, frankly. You stand by everything I said and did. I think you're dirtbags for what you did. Fuck you. And in the end, he just sort of thought better of it and fucked off. But those guys were all arseholes. Those the royalty of commentators in StarCraft, like, Day 9 was the same. As I said, first time I met him, he put his hand in my all I said was hello, and he screamed and put his hand in my face because he was watching a fucking demo review. He was just a mad bully and cunt behind the scenes. Everybody fucking knows that. And like, you can even talk to some Dota motherfuckers about him when he did that TI. What a fucking diva he was. So, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if these are, like, mad, unheard of behind-the-scenes stories. Obviously, a ton of shit from after parties where people got hella lit, and I'm never telling them ones.
No. I've got a couple I can tell you, because these are all, like, semi-front-facing / people just won't know them, maybe. So one that technically isn't even, like, a secret story. It's just that it's such an old story, no one will remember it. Is in 2012, because I'm pretty sure, let me think, was it 2012 or 2011? think it was 2012. In 2012, I went to IEM Kiev, funnily enough, when they had the StarCraft 2 tournament there. And at the time, right, an interesting detail, people might not know that I always had a philosophical disagreement with Carmack over at esports, is Carmack basically hated the era of esports that was Warcraft 3. Because in Warcraft 3, they got really cynical and they used to just do invites that were like almost WWE. Like it's just all the most popular players get invited to the tournament. And the premise was, if you were like, let's say, a top 8 player, you were always going to get invited to this tournament. But then the problem became, if you were a top 8 player, but you weren't anymore, as in a year later, you're actually half as good, but you're like grubby or something, you're getting invited no matter what, whether there's an up-and-coming guy who's better than you. So Carmack, unfortunately, tried to go the other way, which is in StarCraft 2, early on, he used to get as few invites as possible. So you might invite like one Korean guy and one, so you might invite like Stefano and then some guy, one GSL, and then some guy from America. But other than that, you had a totally open qualification system that was online. And so even, by the way, some GSL champions had to actually play like the online qualifier and try and get to the LAN. So one of the people who made it through this, though, who Carmack actually held up as like, this is like his example of why he did this, was a Belgian Protoss player called Feast. Because the premise was, because he wasn't a famous pro and he'd made it to IEM and he made it to the playoffs and everything, Carmack obviously held this up as like, look, it proves the system works. So because this player was like the hot shit, because he's come out of nowhere, it's like basically he's like an amateur / semi-pro, but he's qualified, and now at the LAN he's made it to the playoffs. Right after the group stage, they were doing the group draw on stage, where you put the balls in the thing and you pick out who's going to take out. And while they were doing this, I was actually interviewing the player himself, Feast. I was interviewing him about like, wow, how's the tournament gone? And you've got out the groups. And as I'm interviewing him, I just say to him, right, in the playoffs though, like, who do you want to play? Like, what do you want? And he basically says something like, all I want is just don't match me against MMA, which was at the time like had been like a GSL champion, the Korean Terran player. And literally, as I'm saying this on stage, they draw out that he has to play against MMA in the first match of the playoffs. But as I'm interviewing him, so I even in the interview, sadly it was on SK Gaming, so it doesn't exist anymore. I even sort of like I'm turning to the stage like, holy shit, and then I'm going like, so what do you think of that? Like, and obviously it was just like a bizarre scenario because I've never essentially had someone in the moment get like a piece of info that like totally changed the context of the interview, because essentially the guy had to be like, well shit, that's the one player I didn't want. The other one is this. This is just one that I can tell, even though technically it is private, just because it's so silly. This guy would, and by the way, this guy would be proud of it and wouldn't in any way be annoyed. So obviously everyone loves Rotterdam, the famous Dutch commentator from, I believe he's from Rotterdam. I actually think he is from Rotterdam and he supports Feyenoord. It's all legit, right? Basically, he's just a silly guy, right?
I've had many a good night out with him.
But he's fun in just a silly way. Like all of his ideas are like weird, and he's always the sort of guy, basically, who, like, the story explains it perfectly. If you understand the story, you understand who he is as a person, right? He was one of those guys, like a lot of gamers, where after you finish playing all night, you obviously go and get a kebab, don't you? Right? He would just go around challenging people. Like, I bet, will you bet me 10 euros to eat 4 of those kebabs? And people would be like, I was even like, well, why would I want to though? And he was like, because think about it, one of them's huge. How could I eat 4? And I was going, I guess. And he was going, so will you bet me 10 euro? And I was like, I don't want to see you eat 4 kebabs. You know what I mean? But he just kept going till he found someone. And then he just did it. And at the end of all of it, right? First of all, imagine how distended your stomach would be with 4 kebabs or whatever it was. Or 3, whatever it was. Like, everyone knows sometimes you can't eat 1 kebab. And he just did this all. And at the end, obviously, got like the 10 euro off someone. And then he was sort of like, he was making it like he'd won. And I was just thinking, like, what is this? What? We're not even all drunk right now. What? How am I in a live episode of Amateur Jackass? Like, what is this shit? But whatever. Here's the thing, though. He is a funny guy, as you can see by that story. He's just a weird guy, basically.
Next question. Rekovic on Steam says, maybe Smooya could go to Overwatch and really revitalise that scene. The UK needs to be topping something again. I did see they've announced that their beta is coming out soon, and it's just like a glorified patch. The beta for Overwatch 2, I should say. So yeah, they're terrible. No, I think Valorant's a real possibility at this stage, but we'll see. Watch Doge.
I actually think, as a more serious point, Valorant might even be the game for him, by the way. Because think about it. One, assuming he's playing like the sort of character, like the fucking. Essentially, if he gets a star player role in Valorant, you can sort of set yourself up. You don't have to have like the most coordinated teammate shit off that. And then secondly, it's mainly at the moment an American influence game, and they'd love his personality. I'm pretty sure it'd go down mega well over there, mate.
Yeah, I think so too. Right, Watch Doge. Do you think the transition of journalism from a working person's job to a college-educated elite job has precipitated the downfall in journalistic standards? I mean, So from my understanding, I remember back when, I finished university and I was looking, I'd had a couple of, I'd made some pretty good connections. I think the magazine I edited got put forward for like a Guardian Student Media Award shortlist or something. I was doing game reviews and music reviews for the Students' Union NUS, the National Union of Students, and generally was well regarded by a lot of, the wanky peers at that time. But it was all the same thing. It was like, to get a media job, you're going to have to move to London. Some of these jobs were paying back then like 9 to 12 grand a year. And you're expected to live in London on London prices with that. So a lot of the times people are like, you can sleep on my floor for a bit till you get enough together for a deposit. And then you get deposit together for a 1-bedroom shithole. And so basically the type of people that went to go and do these jobs back in the day were, like you said, the kind of like working class journalist, basically a working class guy who punched above his weight academically, wasn't held back by things like the tripartite system in schools and stuff like that, where literally in Britain, for those who don't know, what they used to essentially do was they would just assess you and say, right, well, you're a bit thick and from a poor family, would work class for you, I bet. They used to essentially pigeonhole you.
Way when you were like 11 years old. We're not talking about like 18. Oh, time to choose your future. Essentially, if you just make it to that exact arbitrary age and you don't pass a certain threshold, you are sort of just tossed on the like slag heap of the world of like second class citizen for life. Like if people don't get it, it's obviously like a mad holdover from like the imperial mentality. Isn't it?
Was,
like, you will be the low class for your entire life. You now go to the coal mine.
Yeah, there was no like sort of upward mobility or anything like that. So anyway, I knocked that back because that prospect to me seemed terrible, and obviously I was naively thinking, I'll just be a journalist in Middlesbrough. Plenty of jobs for that there, and of course, I ended up back in the call center nightmare that a lot of people end up in after university because they fill your head full of shit that if you get a degree, it's going to fix all your problems. Government's telling you to go and get a degree. When I went, everyone
from my area, mate, they all went and got mega degrees. Some of them like fucking A's, everything. Big unit. They're all in the call center.
Yeah.
Or now, they've transitioned to a successful career at like a credit card company or something. Like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's so dark.
But it was a time as well, and obviously what we know now, it was when I went to university, we'd only had a couple of years, I think, where it was loans and not grants.
That was the beginning,
and so basically what the government was essentially doing by encouraging you to go to university was just getting you. You got loan sharked essentially, to do the right thing for society, by the way, with absolutely zero upside unless you went to like Eton or something. So yeah, I mean, basically what started happening around about that time, and I noticed it, and I was talking about it back then, was the type of people that were working journalist jobs were people who were already sort of independently wealthy, or at the very least, like middle class. They could afford to give up 3 months to go do an internship at a big newspaper for no money, or they already knew people in the industry, or their dad had a second home in London that they could stay in and commute to work. And basically, and obviously I'm talking about the UK. It was certainly mirrored in America as well, where they put so much on the college over there that you basically don't get hired without a college education to work for a major newspaper unless you're some sort of like mini celebrity in your own right. So yeah, it's definitely been it's not the standards, it's the stakes. Because basically, like, if you believe you're lucky to be there and you don't feel entitled and you're terrified of fucking up, you're going to handle your work with a greater degree of care. And that was, probably see that with me. It's like I was always terrified of having my journalistic reputation destroyed, and it's why I get super tetchy when people say, because I've got an accuracy rate no journalist should ever have to hold themselves to. Well, you should hold yourself to it, but rather it's unrealistic to think you'll ever get through a career and do it. But yeah, what you notice now, of course, is that increasingly it's sort of become people who aren't fit to be journalists, knowing other journalists, knowing connections through college, being airlifted into positions of journalism because it has essentially become a pursuit almost entirely of the upper class. and the college-educated people. And, all you need to know is that, like, patient zero for fucking terrible journalistic ethics, Nathan Grayson, is, like, at the Washington Post now. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, look, it is the right place thematically for him, but fucking hell, that's the way he can get to after all the shit that guy's done.
That motherfucker, what's he called? The motherfucker from BuzzFeed's at the New York Times now. I mean, it used to be a meme that you would post to these people, you'll never work for a serious masthead.
Yeah.
Now they all are. Like, Taylor Lorenz has worked for the New York Times and the Washington Post. Do you know what I mean? And she's literally tweeting shit out going, the only reason anyone criticizes me is because I'm so good looking. Tee-hee-hee. It's like, that is your journalistic class now. So yeah, obviously it's the lack of stakes. These people, by the way, they consider, like, if they get something wrong, they don't consider it to be like, oh, I failed as a journalist, that's awful. They consider the fallout on Twitter to be the awful part of it. And all these journalistic outlets are essentially beholden to Twitter, which, as we all know, doesn't fucking represent real life or real people's problems in any way, shape, or form. It's just a fucking wasteland of fucking, people continually seeking out recreational outrage to fill their empty lives. So yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it. Journalism's had problems for a long, long time, and it's been spiraling down the tubes. There's other issues, as I said, the reduction of local journalism. They've slashed thousands of jobs of local publications because it's not profitable. The reliance on advertising and corporate money, the proximity to governments that you see in like Britain and Canada, where it's like, hey, we'll bail you out of all your financial problems, and I'm sure this won't impact on your coverage somewhere down the line. That happened in Canada, $600 million to bail out, the state media institutions and give journalists a ton of benefits, which of course can be withdrawn if you call Trudeau a sort of tyrant or whatever. I'm sure he can walk it back. In Britain, with the special tax that the BBC is given essentially to fund their operation, a number of governments, a succession of governments, in fact, have told the BBC, if your coverage doesn't become fairer, we might have to revise the special relationship we have. In other words, ending their entire funding revenue stream, and would force them into taking, traditional means of advertising and sponsors and stuff. So there's a ton of problems with it, but I mean, it's just a dead and busted profession as far as I can tell. The lines between journalism and politics and big tech, they're all so blurred now to a degree that's unprecedented, that all these people all work in cahoots with each other to essentially push any given narrative at any given time. It's very hard to even find correct information. Very hard to find people that actually, recant information when it's proven to be wrong by independent sources. The only positive I would say about the whole thing is it's at least a good time for independent journalists, because I'm not telling you anything you don't already know by answering this question. And as a result, people are starting to seek out independent journalists. It brings with it a unique set of problems because a lot of them are frauds and liars themselves and grifters on both sides of the aisle, but there are good independent journalists out there that operate outside of the paradigm. So, next question. Orky, in an alternate timeline, Richard and Thorin have been recruited by the Canadian government to end the honking. To get your mind in the right frame of reference, you are all subjected to the same honking regimen of Ottawa residents over the 2-week period or so they had. All means are at your disposal and bonus points for creative solutions. How do you boys get it done? At the end of the day, actually, when the protest came in, the honking part to me was the dumb part.
Absolutely.
Blockading business and commerce makes sense to attain political ends.
Of course, yeah.
But annoying residents that might otherwise support you, because as you know, a lot of these people, what got lost in the noise, no pun intended, was obviously a lot of the people who were disproportionately affected by the protests were obviously working class people too. Yes. They just didn't want to go out and show solidarity with that particular cause, which is their right. And listen, I made a point of saying it. If I was living in Ottawa, I would have to it's not acceptable to just laugh about it and say, well, just get yourself some earplugs.
Agreed.
It's not, no. When you're sleep deprived, that bleeds into all of your life. How do you know someone's not going to get in their car and crash it because they didn't get a good night's sleep? How do you know they're not going to make mistakes around their children that puts the children in danger? How do we know they're not going to have an unsatisfactory performance at work and get fired over it? So it for me, it's like, listen, it was peaceful protest. I don't go so far as to say that what they did was like, what was it they say now? A fucking insurrection is the one, or an occupation.
Yeah. A coup or whatever.
Yeah, I don't fuck with that at all. But equally, I recognise that the people in Ottawa were massively negatively impacted by that. Of course, yeah. So listen, for me, I think the first thing you do is you parlay. You say, look, if we just stop the honking, right? Let's get around the table. Here's some reps from the government. Here's some You send your best representatives, not the lunatics that were saying Trudeau has to fucking step down immediately and we have to be installed as a part of government, because that was just fucking stupid from the get-go. That has to be the starting point. That's what that to me is like, I just think that's best practice in any of these situations. I would have liked, and by the way, I apply this retroactively to all of these protests. I would have liked to have seen fucking Trump to at least have the fucking wherewithal when all the BLM protests were going to actually attend some of these events and fucking try and interface with the people and listen to their grievances, instead of being Trump and making outrageous comments about meeting with the police and saying, we back the blue, and when you arrest people, make sure you bang the head and all this other nonsense. It's like, discourse is important. It's important in a functional society. So, yeah, I don't know if that would have fixed it, but I would have started there. Chingu.
If he wanted a joke answer, the joke answer is I would have had Optimus Prime turn into his truck form and infiltrate the thing and then just go whatever, and then talk to them all and then just leave, wouldn't they? So the problem solved.
Known infiltrator and snitch, Optimus Prime.
Listen, it's an edgy new series coming on Netflix soon, but it's the title of it, Known Influencer and Snitch, Optimus Prime.
So Chingu says, how much do we need to pay for a Rich and Sam play games regularly channel? I'd just like to hang out with Sam. I don't even see him anymore, do I, Sam?
Yeah, it's not just me, but you regularly disappear for a week as well.
Yeah, but mostly you.
No, as if I'm always here. But
you ignore me on Discord now.
No, you just send me random shit. That's the only thing I do.
It's my way of starting up a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
a link at 5 a.m. to just some outrageous.
I am awake at 5 a.m. often. Yeah,
that is Richard's more. It is always like the really, really late night, like really like fucked up link of like this.
That's what I'm doom scrolling with my chronic insomnia.
10 frogs. Like, oh, fuck. I was about to go to bed. All right, fucking hell.
Yeah. But yeah, like me, I'm trying to think if there was anything we would even be playing right now.
Any good I did start playing. I started playing that new WWE game. But mate, right,
the new one,
85 quid to play it 3 days early. So they had 85 quid out of me, right? And now they've introduced their own Ultimate Team, but it's only single player from what I can find. So you can open packs and it's literally just single player to get wrestlers.
Wait, but how does that work in wrestling?
So you draft wrestlers, you put them in, I think you need 4 at a time, and then you just have a tag team match, 4v4. And I think it's just that over and over again. But it might. I've already played it a little bit. It might be different.
The GM mode look good. Here's the thing: I can't fuck with buying WWE products anymore. They're on my shit list right now. Like, did you see as well? I can't remember who was telling me this, but apparently they copyrighted. So now they don't even want to be known as like the WWE. They want to just be WWE without it standing for anything like an acronym.
That thing again, like TSM did it, Sarah. Like,
yeah, but like apparently because Vince doesn't like the word wrestling being used.
That's like one of those fucking
it's for real. Mate, you've got to go. By the way, like, because I know obviously, like, we're boomers and we remember good wrestling and all shit now. And actually, I watched the AEW pay-per-view over the weekend. It was pretty fucking good, actually. Some good bouts. They're killing it over there. But like, if you go and look into what's happened with the management and stuff, mate, it's mental. Like, fucking Triple H got his own son-in-law got ousted. No one's even seen that cunt since he had a heart attack. Because, spoiler, he was on the juice and it wrecked him.
Obviously.
Yeah, allegedly. Don't come at me. Don't come at my head, Vince. With your killers.
The shooters or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, like it's like they don't like talking about wrestling anymore. They cut somebody, I think, for saying in a promo, we're not sports entertainment. We're motherfucking wrestlers or something like that. And they're like, you're gone.
Like, how dare you?
Yeah, how dare you in my wrestling company? So he doesn't even think of it as a wrestling company anymore. He calls it like a fucking content provider and stuff. He's lost his mind, mate. He's lost his fucking mind.
Still home.
He was on the Pat McAfee show. I haven't watched it yet, but I might check it out. It's
Oh,
always
so
good.
Just did it like today or something, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to like check in and get inside the mind of a fucking dribbling lunatic every now and then. So see what Vince is up to, but he's fucking bananas. But anyway, yeah. I mean, look, we put our. You have to understand, by the way, because of the way YouTube works, I'm killing my fucking channel by putting out regular content. I don't know if Duncan can attest to this, but basically, as soon as I upload a video. If I go for daily content, as soon as I upload a video, 50 subs disappear. But I'm saying not when I post it, when I upload it. And then when you post it, if it's not what people want or like, and you've got some like legacy sub, they just go, oh, I'm not even interested in that. And then they might unsub. So you get fucked twice because how YouTube works. But I'm still getting messages from regular people going, I've been unsubbed from your channel and I never would unsub. I love your work. So basically, by putting out regular content, and also some of it, by the way, is so niche. Like the Ian Armeen Football Manager playthroughs get 6,000 views, and everyone's like, "This is the best Football Manager series on YouTube." Well, share it around then, you cunts, to let people know about it, because no cunt watches it. And obviously, I lose 50 subs just for fucking uploading it.
You say that right now in a locked, tense meeting at the 11th hour at the Opcomma HQ. They're like, where can we get more of this boomer Football Manager related content? It's getting 6,000 views a video. That's worth at least $200,000 a year.
I know, I shouldn't even be disparaging about 6,000 views, really, should I, in light of other people?
Yeah. By the way, that's actually something real as well. I was worried at one point in time that just only my channel is being limited, and as we all have that paranoia at some points, right? But I will say, Richie, in general, the views on everyone's channel look like they've taken a massive tank. And it looks like they definitely restrict games to more, or maybe we just don't get access to the algorithm or whatever it was that was pumping the numbers up, Because I've noticed the whole industry seems to have taken a downturn in terms of like average views and stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally. And listen, obviously, sometimes I'll just make a video that everyone just fucking hates, so it just triggers everybody. Like I did one where I was like, "Here's AOC, what's up, fellow kids? What's up, fellow Democrats?" And it's like I'm saying, it's ridiculous that like gamers were all called like fucking we're Nazis who got fucking Trump elected after taking money from Putin and working on Steve Bannon's World of Warcraft. Yeah, so and then obviously pre-election, AOC came and did like a stream with like Pokemon and all that. Yeah. Fucking basically said like, listen, haha, they all rigged it so she had like longer game time and won and everything. And the whole time, haha, voting is important, kids. Voting is important, kids. Keep in mind, she couldn't explicitly say vote Democrat or whatever because I think that's actually against Amazon's agreement with Twitch. They got in trouble with it recently because they ran anti-union ads on Twitch channels because everything's bad. But yeah, but so I did a video where it was like, oh yeah, it was AOC with that Steve Buscemi meme, but her head going like, "What's up, fellow Democrats?" with the skateboard, right? And it's just called like "Gamers are Democrats" now, and I'm just talking about how ridiculous it is and showing examples of the coverage in the media. And then 2 weeks before an election, when they need the youth vote turnout to beat the orange man, suddenly we're all good, and lo and behold, Biden's got in, and gamers are bad again. It's just they just use you for your vote, like all political parties do. But anyway, I lost 1,000 subs that day. Gone. Loads of people posting, like going, "Your right-wing talking points." It's like, can we critics?
I've lost all respect.
Yeah, loads of that. Strong uptake for that. Also, you can't fuck with AOC. She's the queen of the Zoomers. You know what I mean?
Is that real?
I know you can't fuck with her. So
I know I'm instantly a mega boomer for saying this, but y'all are the most disappointing generation of all time.
No, listen, I remember when us Gen Xers were getting that. Right, it is the thing. We still had good stuff. You TikTok addled motherfuckers are outrageous. Yes. You're outrageous. You can't do you can't do it. You can't even talk without adding fucking plus ratio plus didn't ask. You're all true. Yes. Plus you fell off. Like it's like we're not our generation isn't saying it this time. We really mean it. We really you are you have all been conceived culturally by some sort of like one of God's weakest sperms. It's got to stop. It's got to be a cut off. But anyway, so yeah, basically my YouTube channel just gets wrecked all the time. So if me and Sam start putting out regular gameplay videos, like we'll be back to 116,000 like we were for 5 years because of the YouTube algorithm. Echo, if you had to pick between turning into a bird or a fish forever, which one would you rather be and what species would you go with?
Right, here's what makes that tough is...
You hate fish.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of fish, but I also don't like birds. To be fair, birds are a bit evil.
I hate everything
Yeah.
that slithers, crawls, and flies. Perfect.
So my problem is this: is on the one hand, there's massive upside to both because you do get to explore fairly freely an enormous domain. Like you get all the ocean, you get all the sky. The problem I'm realizing is this though, right? I'd have to be like an apex predator or something because the thing I can't handle about either choice is if you're one of the ones lower down the food chain. It's brutal the way you get killed if you're a bird or a fish, mate. Essentially, a cunt just comes along and with his face kills you and rips your head off and starts eating you while you're alive. Like, it ain't great. So I'd have to be some next level shit like an eagle or fucking shark or something, you know.
For me, I'd have to be a bird.
Why?
I hate the fucking water. I hate that. I've got that like thalassophobia or whatever
Okay.
the fuck they call it. I mean, that's like one of them mad
Oh, really?
self-diagnosed
Didn't
things.
know that.
But like, yeah, it really fucks with me. Like, even putting my head underwater, I just fucking can't fuck with it. I just don't like it at all. It's like I kept trying to play that fucking Subnautica game, and I could only play it for like 5
That was
minutes.
fucking with you.
Oh, mate, it was wrecking me. It was wrecking me. Imagine like I was just in a permanent state of like fear, just on edge, and like there are jump scares in it, and I'm thinking my heart will fucking pop because I'm already up here. If I get jump scared by something mega in the ocean, and plus it's the sound design in that game's mega, so it was just fucking me. But yeah,
Actually, you know what? I've
can't do it.
decided. I know with the answer because I've got a hack, and here's the answer. I would be a bird because if you're a bird, are you ready? I would be a seagull because at least you get to eat chips still chips.
True.
That's a life hack right there.
Never, yeah, but cold chips often.
That's true. Oh, I haven't thought that one through. Yeah, I've done myself on that one.
Unless you swoop
back on
right
cold
into them
chips.
motherfuckers, unless you fully seagull it and just attack it, and then knowing your luck, you'll get that one that got mauled by that fucking boomer in a pink shirt. Remember him who just killed the seagull in front of all of them, and he was just going, shouldn't have nicked me chip.
And everyone's just looking at him like an absolute serial killer. Like, what are you doing? It's like kids and shit watching.
I know, man. He was from the northeast.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I'd be a bird. I don't know what species. I like parrots. I like all the parrots. The African greys. Yeah, exactly. And mate, they live for fucking ages as well. It's a hell of a lifespan for a bird. So be down with that. Jerky's Minion. What, in your opinion, is the best band, group, franchise merch that's out there right now?
Merch. Oh, that's the part. The problem is that.
Let me have a look at the most recent 100 Thieves drop.
Oh, it has to be esports.
Well, no, he did say band.
Like,
he did say band, right? Group, or franchise.
Yeah, let me think. What would
so
be
it could be anything. Sure, I'm only thinking esports.
The obvious answer for me would be Yeezy,
like
the brand of the creative visionary genius Kanye West, and his.
Is he still? They're not still making them.
I think they do, but I don't. I think put it this way, I haven't bought it in quite a few years now.
Let me see. Let me have a look at this is some fucking ridiculous boom.
I'm sure they will have like a new season of shit or whatever,
Yeezy shoes.
It'll just have all like edgy political messages like "Let me see my kids" just written across the front or something, like.
Skeet across the back.
I know. By the way, I can't handle it. He calls that guy Skeet as well. Please.
Like it's yeah.
I know.
Right. So I don't know. Like I'm really trying to think of like an example of like unbelievable merch. Like, let me see. I don't like. It's such a tough question. Yeah, I mean, like band T-shirts. That's about it for me. Like in esports, I think we've said it before. I mean, like to be fair, listen, 100 Thieves. It's arguable whether they're really an esports organization.
You like the sportswear and stuff though, the like sort of lifestyle.
I think they've done, because again, it's all drops where essentially what they make it look like they're creating scarcity to make it cooler, but in reality, what they're doing is they're doing small batch merchandise things because they want to guarantee that they sell out and maximize profits and don't have warehouses full of shit. But they've framed it, they've sold it in a really cool way, so that's fine, I mean, like, I fucking hate FaZe Clan. But let me just say, FaZe Clan merch.
I could imagine
You
FaZe is
notice
good.
I still can't buy a JKS jersey
That's
as
true.
well.
I've always thought as well, actually, like as much as I might dislike the org and some of the people in it, I actually think FaZe Clan's jerseys and stuff over the years are pretty cool. I used to love that original FaZe one, you know, the one that had like the gaudy colours. I thought it looked banging. They've even sort of kept the genesis of that in the current looking one, you know.
Yeah, let's have a
I've
look.
always found FaZe to look pretty good.
Hoodies.
Oh, actually, if we can do esports, of all the esports teams that merch that I've tried, the two best that I have found, and obviously they gave me the gear, so disclaimer, they did give me the stuff, but you have to know, I would just not mention if it was shit. Both Cloud9 and Team Liquid have some really good stuff. Like Team Liquid has some stuff.
The Team Liquid, like, what do they call, like varsity jackets?
Yeah,
fucking rad. They're really good.
Not only do they look good, but like the quality of the material's good. They're not like the ones where you do 2 washes and it's fucked and you get, in general, it's pretty good stuff, And you could wear it, and it doesn't just have to look like esports. It's just lifestyle gear, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know for bands and stuff, unfortunately, because the problem is, like, again, I'm not like a merch guy. Like, if I like a band, I just listen to the music. I'd maybe say, like, I don't know which specific stuff, but like that stuff that Alex created for Tool's pretty sick. I like the art of it at least. So maybe a T-shirt of that or something.
Yeah, that's true.
That was pretty banging art, right?
I think they're touring at the moment, mate. I think I saw that on my fucking timeline. Tool coming back. It won't be the same. It won't. I've seen them live back in their fucking heyday. I'll leave that memory there I don't need an update for that. But yeah, I mean, listen, I really like G2. I think the one thing in general I will say is I think merchandise in esports has got like pretty good now. I think people have, the big orgs understand.
They're not ripping you off anymore now. Like, not only is it like reasonably priced, but they actually use proper ingredients. Like, back in the day when they made the first T-shirts, those were dog shit and they would just wreck after a few washes, wouldn't fit properly, worst material, you know, the sticker thing, whatever, you know, the thing where you like iron it on, it'll just come off mega easily. Like, it used to be, they were really cynical. Like, they were absolutely fucking, what do you call it, where you skin the sheep instead of shearing it back then. It used to be outrageous in esports. Like, you would have felt ashamed if you'd have given some of that stuff. The stuff now, like I'm saying, you give someone like a Team Liquid hoodie, like, dude, someone who doesn't even like esports would like that's cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think G2 also do these, like, custom jerseys for each of the countries, and they're, like, really nicely designed. I
like the design they use with the flags. Yeah, they do a good job on that.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So, one of them.
Yeah.
Right, BP420. What would it take for you to get someone else's face, preferably mine, tattooed over your face?
Here's the problem. I can immediately address this because I will never get a tattoo of anything. So I would never get any tattoos. There's no amount of money in the world.
Personally. There's no amount of money.
I'm just against tattoos in general, for me personally.
Any reason?
This is what I find weird, mate. This is how I know socially people have been engineered to think these are good, because I don't even know why. That's the question I always get. Why don't you want to put ink inside your skin? I don't know why I'm the weird one for that. Oh, well, fuck me. Yeah, I better get into therapy. I had fucking hell. Like, I go the other way. Like, what is your issue? You are aware they only used to do that, like, ritually in tribes and shit. Like, that wasn't just a thing in, like, the 18th century or something. Like, I find it weird that everyone else has just gone. Like, I can't believe, by the way, how many pro players in esports who are under the age of 30 have just had, like, their whole sleeve done in like an entire design. Like, mate, you could regret that like a motherfucker soon. Also, what, you know, like, some of them look good, some of them look terrible, mate.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm at the halfway point. I remember when my dad, when I visited him in prison, he always said, you know, don't be a mug, don't ever get a tattoo. That's the first thing they'll identify you on if you ever commit a crime. That was his sick. Pretty smart. That was his sick advice. He said it from a prison cell. Like,
true.
You know,
true. Okay.
I'm gonna say, mate, maybe not the best at evade and capture, but you know, for me, like, obviously I've got ink. But there's parts where, you know, I would still adhere to a more traditional view of tattoos in the sense that if you can't cover it and stuff, if you can't cover it, you know. So the problem I've got is that, like, even though tattoos have become more socially accepted, you can get your neck tattooed, no one's going to say anything. You can get your knuckles tattooed now, no one's going to say anything. Back in my day, the old love-hate on the knuckles was basically meant you probably done a bit inside. Absolutely. And, you know, if you went to a fucking job interview with love-hate there, not covered up, you weren't getting the job no matter what. No, you know, I mean, like you say, my uncle's got fucking facial tattoos from when he was in a gang. And, you know, it was disqualifying. He led the life of a pariah. Now I see fucking rappers rocking that shit, and it's like, you know, they're millionaires. So I don't know. I mean, for me, the face is off limits. I generally as well, and this is probably fucked up, I always just think you're not in a good place if you get your face tattooed. I thought that back when Tyson did it.
Oh, I agree.
I thought he's not in a good place right now because you are. There's nowhere to hide that. You are making a statement forever, and maybe you're comfortable with that. But in general, there are some tattoos that are going to age badly. I don't think like sleeves or whatever. I think getting your chest completely covered when you're going to have saggy old man tits, like at 60, 70, if you live long enough, that's not going to be great to look at in the mirror. Plus, over time, as you know, tattoos lose their luster, lose their shine, lose their fucking definition and clarity as your body kind of shifts shape. So, if you're married, whoever's looking at that's not going to be fucking thinking, wow, I'm loving that blue smear on your chest, So there's lots to consider. In general, I just wouldn't get a facial tattoo, which isn't to disparage anyone who does or chooses to. Your body, your choice. So that's where I'm at. But no, I don't think you could pay me enough to get a face of someone else's face tattooed on my face.
I also, by the
You be
way,
in a circus after that?
I also, low-key, and I don't give a fuck that there will be people who will be fans of me. I can't believe. I also massively look down on anyone who does stuff like get someone famous tattooed to get in like the news or to get paid from it. Like, I think that's whack as fuck. Another thing as well, like if you want the tattoo,
Weird trend of that in esports, by the way.
Get something you want on. It's because unfortunately you're just guaranteed to get to the top of Reddit for that day, aren't you? Yeah. So that's why people will do stupid shit like get Dorsey tattooed on their foot. It's like, is that really worth it for one day's worth of Twitter karma? That, remember, cannot be used in exchange for anything whatsoever in the world.
Yeah, that's bad. Right, Samuel Hutama. What was the favourite thing to do during your childhood?
Sound like some sort of fake name that Sam is using to go
yeah, I know, yeah. Samuel Dave Tarmer. When will you remove me from Discord?
What was the question again?
What was your favourite thing to do during childhood? Mine's pretty easy. Because until we could afford the first sort of TV and computer games, it was read. Where I grew up, I couldn't go out. I didn't have a sort of male family member in my life at that time to sort of fight the battles that you were going to have to fight on a rough estate in the northeast of England post mining collapse in Thatcher's Britain. You had to be really put together, and there was an expectation. You would be adept at physically fighting even as young as like 6 years old. It was fucking rough. And so I wasn't about that shit unless it was put upon me. And so I spent a lot of time indoors reading, didn't really go out, didn't really mix with a lot of friends because they were about that life and doing that stuff. And I definitely didn't want to do that, especially as you can't underestimate what a profound impact it would have on your perception about that to have someone in your life in prison for violent crimes. And I had a lot of people in my family that had done a spell in jail. And there was also a lot of pressure on me to not go down the same road, to push back against that and to get a good education. There was a lot of expectation on me being I had to be different to the other generation. It was pretty clear I was smarter than a lot of my cousins, so a lot of even my uncles, a lot of attention on me. Don't do this. So I used to sit in and read. I was reading books like way above my age level, and probably some I shouldn't have been exposed to. It probably made me fall in love with the written words because it was, no excuse. It was like a friend. And then on top of that, when video games obviously came out, back when we could afford it, I used to play all sorts. I used to love it, especially all the one-player tactical games, turn-based stuff, Rebel Star Raiders, Laser Squad, all the Julian Gollop shit. So yeah, man, it was chaos. Best game of all time. So yeah, that was it basically. But sort of those two pursuits essentially shaped who I am today because, if you look at what I went on to do career-wise, it's no coincidence.
Yeah. No, same for me. I would say the same two things. Those would be the two activities I spent the most time doing as a kid. If you notice, they're both obvious escape from life, aren't they? If you're in like a poor family and you're not in a great place, and there isn't loads of cool things you can go and do, that becomes like its own vista of like possibility, doesn't it? It becomes incredible.
Yeah.
I used to do the same thing as well, by the way. With games, I would just play almost anything. Back then, I had no sort of like preconcept. I would try any genre. I even used to do that thing you stupidly do where you're like 8 and you try and play the game that is for adults. It's like so hard you can't even comprehend like how the game works. I would waste so many hours doing that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, but like there was a ton like that as well. I mean, like I said, because I started on the fucking Spectrum 48K, so you'd have to wait 5 minutes to load up the game on cassette, and then obviously once you've done that, you better get an hour of play out of it, like before you turn it off, because it takes 5 minutes to load the fucking thing up. Atarian, when should I, an American, start with getting into football brackets soccer? I mean, look, I think the journey for any football fan starts by picking a team you fuck with, finding a team that speaks out to you for whatever reason. Because remember, you don't have the locality as a consideration. So you could be glory supporting scum, like a lot of people are, and follow a team that's guaranteed to win trophies, jump in on your cities. Not so much your Chelsea's with the news today, your Liverpool's, But I mean, ultimately, what I would do is, if you've ever watched soccer, you probably have a good idea about how the game can be played, the different levels, different styles, different tactical approaches to the game. And you find a football team that you'll enjoy watching first and foremost. And then once you've done that, once you've watched that team a few times, like Arsenal, for example, right now, it's a weird situation. At the start of the season, they were dog shit. They've cleared out a ton of deadwood, brought through some young players. Looks like they're on course for a guaranteed top 4 finish against all the odds when they were just above the relegation zone, like 10, 11 games in. And they've done it by bringing in young players you might not have heard of and developing talent. And they're playing really exciting, attractive football again, which was always Arsenal's hallmark, So, I mean, they're a good team. If they're on TV, I'll watch Arsenal, even though I fucking hate Arsenal fans, But so you've got to watch a team that you can sort of tolerate watching, and then you just get to learn the players. I mean, I did the same with the NFL. I chose Raiders when I was a kid because the 49ers were on top and they were their rivals. And then anytime I could watch anything of the Raiders on Channel 4, on a weekend, I would dial in, I would learn the players, learn the names, follow the careers. Obviously, we didn't have the internet back then, so I couldn't like Google, but now you can. And that's what you do. And then eventually it'll go from being an almost forced artificial enjoyment to something that you are genuinely invested in as emergent storylines happen around your club. Maybe a player that got you to support the team in the first place gets sold. Then what? How do you feel about that? And you'll be able to engage with the other fans who are feeling the same way. So that's what you got to do first and foremost. Find a team you can watch them, and the rest should come natural.
The thing is, though, as you say, in the modern day with YouTube, you can just go and find so much shit. You can probably find documentaries about the players, everything. Oh, there's another thing you could do. An obvious way to me, if you're a total outsider, would be in the same way as how everyone got into Formula One, go and watch those series like where they do like All or Nothing, Tottenham Hotspur, whatever. Watch one of those. Into it because there's reality series in it, so it'll give you some background to the games. That'll give you another reason to be interested in one of the teams, maybe.
Yeah, that one at Tottenham with Mourinho was
mega, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was mega. So First Sock asks, who do we think is currently the best North American CS player? Is it still Alish? Can we say that? Is it Naf?
Or Twists, maybe? You could maybe put him in the mix.
Is it Twists?
I think it's between those three, so I'm trying to think. Yeah, the problem is obviously Liquid's been a bit shit. They've done the roster move. We've barely seen the move, barely in Katowice. Yeah, I think that's pretty up in the air. I think you could go with any of those three names. I think
honestly, I think thinking about it, you probably are going to have to say Twists at this moment in time, just based on the sample size we got for 2022, right? I mean, so first of all, they've just won a major tournament.
Checked out really well at Katowice, especially when he's been moved position. Like I said on the Pop Flash thing, the amount of clutches this guy either won or like almost won. He looked mega at that tournament. I thought he looked really good.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I'm trying to think as well. Like, I'm looking at the top.
Is there anyone else in there, like stats wise or anything that could be on this list?
Mate, am I blind?
Because to be fair, you have to remember all three teams came out last place at Katowice to do this.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm looking at
I'm
looking at the top 30 rankings at the moment, and like Liquid and Evil Geniuses aren't there. So they're just
they're not even on the list.
They're not even in the top 30 at the moment, based on the finishes they've had, and obviously other people being more active. So I think you probably have to say Twists, just on that basis. Now that might not be true. There's a conversation to be had about NAF, I think. But I think just based on the sample size we got in 2022, I've got no problem saying Twists. I thought he was a key component of their victory in Katowice. Another one from Jerky. If we ever build the esports centipede, why would D-Man be the back piece?
That's a question he asks God every night. That's probably what D-Man would literally write on a tiny piece of paper, scroll up, and then put into the fucking that like wall in Israel where you send prayers to God.
Oh yeah, the Wailing Wall. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that's it.
Yeah, man. No, I mean serious. Like the fucking. Like at the end of the day, it's rough to see somebody who was like sort of successful, like really kind of struggle to maintain relevance.
Here's the thing, though.
But it's
But be
deserved.
real. The problem is this, Rich. If like nothing, like I'll be straight up. If he'd have actually just straight up left esports after all that shit with the ESL, I'd just actually ordinarily feel sympathy for him now. I'd feel so sorry. Like he actually, some of these scenarios, by the way, he even was good at his job, but he did kind of get a little bit pushed out and screwed over, and he definitely zigged when he should have zagged. But my problem is, I can't. Unfortunately, it just tickles the funny part of like the funny porn, Rich, because like on that episode a couple of episodes ago, where we had like an update where he was going like, "Oh, the bloody told me I don't know anything about league or whatever." Like it's like the fact it just keeps going. Like his life is Dickensian as fuck. Remember, he was in CSGO in 2015. It's 2022, and life just won't stop ground and pounding this motherfucker. He's just spent the last 10 years, boys, in like Habib Nurmagomedov's guard being fucking pounded on the whole time by the industry, and he can't get a break. He can't even come up for air. Like it's mental, innit? Like life just won't give this guy a break.
I mean, like I say,
Because the idea he comes back to league. Remember, he's been gaslit by Reddit for like the better part of half a decade. That if he ever came back, he'd be so popular because it's all idiots on Reddit who won't even remember him from EULCS. They're like, oh, if you ever come back. So he's come back on a low level, and obviously everyone's going, who the fuck is this guy? It's so fucked up, isn't it? Like, because they've even lied to him and brought him back. It's so stupid, isn't it?
it's that last tweet was just too perfect as well. Well, time to start over.
Yeah, I know.
Again.
Time to move on again.
This bit. But anyway, listen, it's hard because I've got memories of back when he was like just one of us. He was just a normal dude and he just loved esports and he was really good in Call of Duty. I mean, he was an amazing commentator in Call of Duty 4 and just one of the lads. And you know, fucking the success at Riot, like in you know, League of Legends, completely warped his head, warped his reality, turned him into a bit of an egotist, and you know that happens all the time in our industry. But yeah, I mean, he just is the back piece based on the hand he's been dealt. You can argue it's karma, but you know, that's not real, so it's just sad. But anyway, thanks, Jerky. Right, we're on the last 3 or 4 now. If Fizz managed to pay for Snoop Dogg to join their org, right, which they did, for those who didn't see the news.
It just gets more surreal every fucking day.
I hope you appreciated my banger tweet that I put out
good.
there. Yeah, you're saying like he's the perfect fix. He's been paying lip service to a criminal organisation his entire career. Which, spoiler, Zoomers, the worst generation ever in the history of the world. We're all going, what do you mean? What criminal organisation? Do you mean Death Row Records? The motherfucking Crips!
I know.
The motherfucking Crips!
The guy literally fucking crip walked at the Super Bowl halftime show. How much more explicit does he need to be? I know.
And by the way, blue.
Spoiler, even though I doubt for a celebrity they would do it. In theory, they are supposed to kill you if you do those things and you aren't in their gang. So, by the way, I'd just go ahead and say, if you don't know about that topic, don't ever naively think you could just go to LA and go to Compton and do that. Like, it won't be a good time for you. It won't be as funny as you imagine it would be.
Yeah, be very careful with those handkerchiefs.
Exactly.
For real. But yeah, anyway, so, I mean, look, so he says, if he's managed to pay for Snoop Dogg to join their org, which team would get Nicolas Cage? He'd be a mega fit for Astralis. Like, he's off his fucking rocker. Like, think about the manifesto we just read out this episode, and then imagine Nick Cage doing it. A, B, C, D! Just dropping it.
I would pay him to read out that manifesto for sure.
Yeah, totally. Mate, the way his career's going, you probably can. Have a look on Cameo. Because he's doing a film every fucking 3 months at the moment, and like obviously it's Nicolas Cage, so one of them always will turn out to be a banger.
Good. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Here's the thing though, in a world where that mad like Guild Beckham deal exists, it's not even like Nicolas Cage couldn't one day be involved there. That's not even out of the realm of possibility now, boys.
Mate, he probably will try and shill an NFT at some point. It feels like inevitable. The Nick Cage NFT, all of his like meme faces, not the bees. But yeah, I could see Astralis. I think it would be a good fit. By the way, Pig, his film was fucking mega. Enjoyed it. Really liked it.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Really good performance. BP420 again. Now that you guys aren't streaming live on Twitch anymore, is it finally safe to once again say my full name? Good question. Can we call him Butt Pounder on YouTube, Sam?
Oh, was that Twitch related?
I mean, you can.
Right.
It'll just it might affect the monetization a bit, but they fuck us
The
every
way
time
it
anyway.
works, as far as I can tell, well, look, as far as I can tell, there's no fucking rhyme or reason to it. Because what happens now with the process, for those who don't know, we upload the VOD is green, we get it all ready to go out. Sometimes the VOD goes out and then it gets fucking, yellowed after the fact, and you have to reappeal for the thing you already appealed because it goes yellow initially and then green and then yellow again. And they claim during this it's all humans doing it, right? But the rule you have when you do a YouTube video is, what is it? No swearing in the first minute?
30 seconds, maybe.
First 30 seconds?
Something
so you
like
can't open up a video like going, cunt. You can't do that. What's up, cunts? That can never be your cool, wacky YouTuber intro. But in general, from what I can tell, the algorithm scrolls through and it finds objectionable terms and then makes a determination about whether or not advertisers would want to be near those objectionable terms. Now, listen, I don't think butt pounding is objectionable. I think people having their butt pounded is a source of great pleasure for everyone. It's diverse, it's inclusive. People enjoy getting their butt pounded. And if you don't, that's fine. You don't have to be compelled to have your butt pounded. It's your butt, your choice.
Play for Astralis. Metaphorically, of course. Always metaphorically.
So, I think you should be able to say it, and it should be okay on YouTube. Maybe even as we're doing this and you're watching the VOD in this bit, maybe there might be like advertisements for lube coming up. What was hilarious, by the way, is when we were talking about Flusher, someone sent me a screenshot of it. It was like, it just came up, trouble with your tax returns.
Oh my God, really?
That's how mega it is these days, so who knows? But yeah, maybe, since we're not doing it live, yeah, I'm happy to bring about Butt Pounder. Well, this will be the judge. If this gets demonetized, we'll assume it's the pounding butts that did it. Okay. Can we, similar question, can we free Butt Pounder 420 and spread the cheeks of glory? We've just answered. Don't know why this is like Butt Pounder. This is mad uptake for Butt Pounder. And then the last question, Echo, and this is just for me, Duncan. When is the next Football Manager stream? I'm assuming he means me and not D-Man. I will be going back to Wakizo Giants very soon. Very, very soon.
Where are Wakizo from, though? What league is that?
I'm in the Ugandan
Why?
Super League. Right. Basically, well, I left. I was in the
call that a Super League for a start off, but okay.
Right. Mate, you'd be surprised. They play, from what I've seen, they play a lot of tiki taka in my fucking. I'm getting wrecked by it. So anyway, like I started at a team, and then basically the Ugandan Super League came calling. Duncan, how'd you say no to that? So I went there. I'm at Wakizo Giants, and we are on course for relegation. It's all the players are dog shit. I'm rock bottom of the league. It's like, there's no doing a D manager.
Let's ask all the players to take a 30% pay cut.
Mate, they're already on £1 a week in some cases. So, like, no, literally, by the way, have you seen the contract? Okay. So it's been fascinating. I've been like learning about Ugandan football. I've even started following all the accounts on Twitter.
In real life, right?
Yeah, because, mate, there's literally there's one that's just like the prison, like Uganda's biggest prison. They have a football team and they play at the prison. That's their home ground. Imagine how mad intimidating that is. There was also
movie script.
Yeah, there was also like one team as well where there was like a real dodgy penalty awarded, and they like want to come back 3-2, and the fans like fucking were pelting them with rocks. But the managers and the players were like, "Fuck you!" Started launching chairs back at them. Mate, this is mega. I love it. I love Ugandan football. So anyway, yeah, I will get it back. We'll be back soon. Once shit things stop happening in the world and esports, probably. And that's that. Another bumper filler episode. They're always the long ones. Shout out, of course, to our sponsors. NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS to take advantage of a 74% discount over the course of a 3-year package. It's real good. 2 clicks. Get yourself in there and get protected. And, of course, as well, midnight.com. Follow my Twitter for more information about how you can bet along with me during the ESL Pro League. And if you go and sign up an account and deposit £20, and we'll match that £20 for the purposes of betting. So super happy to have them on board, and we'll be doing lots of content. In fact, I might even be doing some watch-alongs for those games, so you can watch me lose money on stream, probably. And, of course, much love to all the patrons. Our $100 patrons, Carve, Cathal, Cred, Jerky's Minion, Marcus Kjumpar, Michael Hewitt, Tobias Bernasconi, Will the Weed Wrangler. And our $50 patrons, Adam Ox, Alex C, A Rammer, which I guess, by the way, Ass Rammer, maybe we can free you as well. Benakagi, Bren, Butt Pounder 420, Canapacito, C-Mark 1991, Echo, Fursock, Gerhan Kaya, Detlef Insomniac, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Atarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Sad Sawar, Samuel Hotama, Satan, SLNXC, The Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Tim Frost, Lonnie, TRL, Watchdog, Zumba and Zarathenia. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you on the next episode in about a week. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.